Morning, everyone. Hi.
Aaron, good morning.
Okay.
Can anybody hear us on your end?
I can.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, great. Well, we are officially live streaming now.
This is our new portable setup, so we're still getting used to it.
Is Sam St. John in the room there?
He's getting maybe coffee,
Good
waiting
place for
on
him.
Joey Barnes. Kind of like herding chickens.
One comes in, another one goes out.
I don't know if you heard, they said it's snowing quite a bit down east. So we were waiting on Joey Barnes, who's coming up from Matapnecook, Indian Township. Coming down, going up, I guess, coming up from.
I mean, I wonder if we want to start things. Oh, there's Joey.
Oh, okay. Robert said he needed to be always leaving it on.
Hi, Joey.
Good
Welcome.
morning, how are you?
So we'll wait for the bingo machine to get set up.
Sorry.
Yeah, about a mile away.
Good morning, how are you?
You saw that.
I didn't,
Oh, yeah.
but I saw Joey.
I haven't been up in a long time.
Right?
It's Jim probably was completely different.
Oh, I had one,
You know,
came out for a basket maker's workshop. 10 years ago.
Yeah, this center looks beautiful.
It's really nice.
it's gonna go really nice. When you guys said to have a meeting here, I wasn't sure because. I mean, that room back there echoes like something terrible, but this is the perfect space.
Yeah.
It is.
Oh, that's what I thought too, was gonna be big thing, and I'm like, boy.
That's why we have the big screen.
Yeah.
We didn't need it.
Who we got? Check away.
Nope.
Richard. Darren.
For Sandy.
Bert, Sandy, and
Say Richard.
us.
Yep. So we have a quorum.
Let's call us to order here at 10:12.
Give it like that.
Welcome, everyone, and we're going to get started with a little opening honoring, and then also an acknowledgement of some of our Penobscot relatives. Living continuously. Million and Francisco Promosa Organ. Have a chameleon in Eduji, Ulinabog. We would get good. Elevitors escape me. Living the kitchen was coming. Sido and Gazoman. I get a virtue, video Pemon. And meet with the home and open. Meet on the already. I'd also like to take a moment to honor those that have passed in some of our communities. Upstate. Living. So everyone's had a chance to review the agenda, and anybody want to have any comments on it or changes?
Introductions.
Oh,
Got
sorry.
a couple that we can do.
Sure. Introductions. All of us, point out, yeah. Nola Rodriguez, that's who I know. Ujay Ozzy Bike, Madonna, we're gonna get a good two. The only one.
Rachel Bell, Projects Coordinator with MITSC.
Good morning, Jill Tompkins, Executive Director of MITSC.
Ezekiel Cross McDonald Lewis. New Jayao, Malax Naga, Walamaguro, Walastakoe. My name is Z. Croft McDonald. I serve as the tribal co-commissioner for Fulton Valley Mouse Indians, and I'm from HBMI and Ormoc First Nation.
No,
Go ahead.
no, I just said.
Oh. I was I'm Sam St. John, with the Holden Native Mountain Indians, and I'm from.
Joey Barnes, passporting, representing the township.
In the room.
I'm Judy Bowman. I live in Portland. I'm a grad student. I'm just happy to be here and with you all.
Ryan Alfredo Senior, survival.
And on the screen. In some order. Go ahead, Robert.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Bob Checkaway. I'm ordinarily the southernmost representative for the state delegation in Freeport, but I'm still traveling. And today I'm coming to you from Salem, Virginia, which I find out is the home of 4 federally recognized and 11 state recognized tribes. And this is the part of the continent where the Iroquoian, Siouan, and Algonquian languages all seemed to meet. And boy, the history was pretty thick, but it would be predominantly the Powhatan Confederacy of over 30 tribes originated here. And Sam and Zeke, I'm especially sorry not to be there because we'll get into the Boundary Waters fishing update later, but you people have all the personnel up there. You've got a full delegation. You're going to be counted on for a leadership role.
William and Robert. Richard?
Good morning, Richard Rosen. I'm a state commissioner. I live in Bucksport, and currently today I'm joining you from Augusta.
Lewin? Darren?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Darren Ranko. I'm the junior representative from Penobscot Nation. I'm joining you from Dedham, Maine, at a place that we call Nahame Benage, which is Turkey Hill. And just thanks for recognizing we've had some pretty significant losses in our community. Two elder women who meant a lot to a lot of us. One is a relation, and Irene Pardilla and Lorraine Dana. They just, again, such a significant loss because they meant so much to so many of us, and they passed within a few hours of one another. And I'm glad they're together in that next part of their journey. So lovely to see you guys today. Thank you.
Lewin, Sandra?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Sandy Armel, and I am Passamaquoddy from Zibayig, and I am a at will, I guess, commissioner who's here today until Zibayig appoints a new one.
Lewin? And I'm not sure. Robert?
He may be in
I
an
think he's in an
appointment.
appointment.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Who else we got there?
Stephanie.
Stephanie.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Stephanie Watson. I'm from Mount Desert Island. I'm joining you currently from Yarmouth, Maine, and I'm the Offshore Wind Program Manager in the Governor's Energy Office. Thank you for allowing me to join you today.
Welcome.
Not the agenda.
All right, anybody have any changes they want to make to the agenda, or just we'll move on? If not. And review of the minutes that were provided from our last meeting, I think we were in Augusta. So everyone had a chance to review the minutes, any changes to those minutes, or all in agreement to have them approved? Looks good.
Bob, you're muted.
Any objections to the minutes?
So moved.
Bob made a motion. Do you have a second on that motion?
I said,
Okay.
Any discussion, objections? Right. Lewin? So status update for commissioners, appointments, and with reappointments.
Sandy already mentioned the fact that she had submitted her resignation, but we don't yet have an appointment to replace her from Zibayig. And then with regard to the state commissioners, Bob Checkaway has been nominated for reappointment, and his confirmation hearing is on March 20th at 3 p.m. And so I guess we can all come down and support him. The other thing is that they are accepting support letters or anything else you'd like to say about Bob by that date, I think the morning of the 20th. And then Gordon Kramer, I do not know any of these gentlemen personally. Gordon Kramer of Enfield, I think he goes by Nels, and he's someone that's been with the Inland Fish and Wildlife, I guess, for years and years, and retired about 5 years ago. He's already called in on some of our fishing subcommittee meetings, so he's been appointed. And then Lloyd Cutler of Carabasset Valley has also been nominated, and a Richard Bronson of Bangor. They're the top three on that list. They don't yet have confirmation hearing dates, so I'll let you know when that comes out.
And are they scheduled for
Not yet,
hearings? Not yet.
not yet. I was actually interested in seeing if I could get their application packages, but I haven't been able to find.
Yeah,
those.
that would be good. I did have a call yesterday from one of the commissioners about the appointments,
Okay.
but he's not available at the moment. So,
I did talk to Nels, because Jerry Reed apparently tried to scare him off. And I tried to say, no, it's not that much work. But so he decided to stick in there and he is going forward.
And the update from Z-Bike is I did ask one individual at Z-Bike about joining and talk with the Chief Bassett as well. And he's still working on appointments also. Or looking at, I should say. Individuals.
That's all I have on that.
Anyone else have any updates or questions on commissioners or appointments or reappointments? Oh, I'm sorry, Sandy, did you change your mind? Is this?
No, not yet, but I want everyone to know that until there is somebody actually who is appointed, I will continue to make myself available for meetings because I don't want to leave, but I have been invited to join the board of directors for the Eastern Area Agency on Aging. And so that feels like a pretty big work group. So, but I'm still here until we get a
Appreciate you.
Yeah,
Thank
yes,
you.
much appreciated. Thank you. Right. So it looks like we get the offshore wind with Stephanie.
Just an introduction. Stephanie contacted me, looking for, I guess, some information about MITSC, and then she started to mention this program, and I had not heard a thing about it. And so there's apparently some opportunities for the tribes. And then I actually went and looked at the statute, and MITSC has a responsibility under the statute. So I was like, oh, okay, well, we should probably look into that, which is basically just to review proposals when there are offshore wind projects. But maybe Stephanie can talk more about that.
Sure, I'm happy to. Is it okay if I share my screen?
Yes.
Okay, let me see if I can do that. Okay, can everyone see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. And I have these slides, but I also very much welcome you stopping me at any point with questions or comments. I'd like to do this as a conversation if we can. And I'd just like to thank you, Director Tompkins, and the commissioners for the opportunity to join you today. Again, my name is Stephanie Watson. I'm the Offshore Wind Program Manager in the Governor's Energy Office, or GEO for short. I'm from Mount Desert Island. My family still lives there. Again, I'm grateful to be here today to introduce myself and start a conversation with you about offshore wind. I'm personally very concerned about climate changes and my children's futures here. And it's one of the reasons I'm working for the state on clean energy from offshore wind. And I can't see you all when my screen has the slides, so please just jump in if you have a question or a thought.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie.
Thanks. This slide shows the big picture of how we can reduce our reliance on fossil fuels that are causing the climate changes we're all feeling throughout the state. These are some preliminary results from our 2040 Clean Energy Plan. You'll notice that one of the clean energy types we need is called offshore wind, and it's represented in blue on this slide. We have two different pathways to reach 100% clean energy by 2040 on this slide, and offshore wind is in both of those. We also need significant amounts of other complementary clean energy sources like solar, as well as more energy storage and transmission. This is an image of what offshore wind might look like in the Gulf of Maine. And you'll notice some wind turbines on the left-hand side, somewhat like what you would see onshore, also deployed in an array, but far offshore in the ocean where the winds are strong. The power is generated from these turbines and then conveyed through a transmission line to shore, where it's converted to the existing electrical grid. So this is just a schematic. It's not to scale. And again, in the Gulf of Maine, we're looking at offshore wind development quite far offshore, actually far more than 20 miles. Offshore wind is really much more than the technology itself. If we do offshore wind right here together in Maine, it can help us achieve multiple goals. Listed here are some statutory goals that we have in the state, as well as other aspirational targets. So we'd like to continue reducing Maine's greenhouse gas emissions, and these are the goals in law. And then we also want to continue our transition to clean energy with our goal of 100% clean energy generation by 2040. Looking to achieve our carbon neutrality goal by 2045. And then we also have a goal to create 30,000 clean energy jobs by 2030. I think we're more than halfway to that goal right now. And these tend to be very strong family supporting jobs. There's a couple of other benefits of offshore wind for Maine, in addition to our clean energy and climate goals. The first one here is it helps us improve our energy resilience and reliability. Offshore wind is a very strong source of renewable energy. It can be generated locally in our region, and power purchase agreements can provide long-term price stability, which is something I think many of us would like to see. You know, our electric bills are going up and down, or up actually all the time, with lots of influences from around the world. You know, the Ukrainian war, for example, COVID, lots of other things affect the prices of natural gas, which really is the generation source for most of the electricity that's used in Maine. I'm sorry, did someone have a question? Okay. Offshore wind is also an additive economic development opportunity for the state, offering more jobs and allowing us to diversify our economic base. Offshore wind offers high-paying jobs across many fields and education levels. We had an analysis done that identified 117 different occupations involved in offshore wind. And that's a really interesting opportunity for the state and people here. There's also the cost of not pursuing offshore wind. They can be very significant. So we're looking at potential continued long-term price spikes and instability for ratepayers, and also continued impacts, heavy impacts to people, infrastructure, and the ecosystem due to climate changes. We know offshore wind has a lot of potential for Maine, and we want to make sure we do it right for our people, our businesses, and our natural environment. So last year, after an 18-month stakeholder process, we published the Maine Offshore Wind Roadmap. And this is a comprehensive plan that offers detailed strategies to ensure offshore wind actually benefits Maine. And you can see on this slide, there are 4 main objectives in that strategic plan. Everything from supporting the economic development side to harnessing the abundant renewable energy, to advancing innovations that are based in Maine, supporting our vital and thriving seafood industry and coastal communities, and then protecting the environment, wildlife, and fisheries ecosystems. Under each of these objectives, we have a set of strategies and implementation actions And then we have 4 very important cross-cutting themes in the roadmap, including stakeholder engagement and communications, equity, transparency and data-driven decision-making, and regional collaboration and coordination. Part of the roadmap expresses Maine's commitment to responsible offshore wind development. So we have very specific strategies that are aimed at some of those core objectives that I mentioned, preserving Maine's thriving marine economy, protecting the ecosystem of the Gulf of Maine, and preserving traditions and cultures here in the state. One important action from the roadmap includes passing an offshore wind energy procurement law. So this is a law that authorizes the state to purchase offshore wind to provide clean power to our grid. So this law was passed in July of 2023, and it authorizes 3,000 megawatts of offshore wind power by 2040 for Maine. 3,000 megawatts is enough to power approximately 1 million homes in the state. And this is the law that Director Tompkins mentioned in the beginning. So we are in GEO in the very early stages of planning. We look forward to consulting with tribes on the draft documents as we work towards our future requests for proposals to supply the offshore wind energy. We also look forward to working with the tribes to ensure a responsible offshore wind procurement process that provides for economic opportunities, the natural resource and cultural resource protection, and advancement of reliable renewable power. The law includes the ability to the necessary prioritization of bids to provide for employment and contracting opportunities for members of tribes in Maine. And it also requires the bidders to identify community benefits that they co-create with federally recognized tribes. We have a page on our offshore wind website that describes this solicitation and energy procurement law in a lot more detail. And I linked that on the slides. I'm happy to share these with you afterwards if that would be useful. And I guess a specific request that I wanted to ask of the commission, but also each of the tribes, is if you could please share a point of contact for your tribe or for the commission, and how you would like to communicate with us about this law. We're happy to do that work in whatever way is most helpful for you. A second important action from the roadmap was operating the Maine Offshore Wind Research Consortium. So this was just established last year with seed funding from the legislature. The goal of the research consortium is to better understand the impacts of floating offshore wind in the Gulf of Maine and work towards avoiding, minimizing, reducing those impacts. The board advises the state. There's an advisory board for the consortium, and it advises the state on research priorities to inform responsible offshore wind development in the Gulf of Maine. And the advisory board includes representatives from fishing, communities, research institutions, ENGOs, the offshore wind industry, state agencies, and others, and it meets quarterly. And we would very welcome any representatives of tribes that would like to join the advisory board. That's been an area that has been a real gap for the work, and we'd like to make sure that the research is meeting needs that you identify are important. So if there's anyone that's interested from this group or a fellow tribal member, please let me know. We try to provide, we always provide virtual options for people to participate. And we can also, do whatever works for any interested people best. Again, there's a link on this page for more information about the consortium. And then I'm kind of switching gears here, but on a related topic, GEO has a new program that's called the Maine Community Energy Redevelopment Program. Tribes are eligible for this. We have a very open and simple survey right now that looks to solicit project ideas from communities to receive technical assistance, to develop action plans and obtain other funding sources. So I think this program is primarily looking at how to use underutilized or old electrical infrastructure, improve upon that, and grow the economy in the area, as well as provide better renewable electricity. I don't know a lot about this, but I know the people who do. So if you're interested in this program, there is a webinar. I think it's actually March 18th, not 14th. Apologies for that, at 4 p.m. The link is on this slide, which I can share. And the survey itself is open until March 29th. I think the goal is to choose, somewhere between 5 and 8 communities to work with, and help pursue federal funding sources, such as from the Department of Energy and others. These are some of the criteria that they're looking at for qualifying projects. If there's sites available, if the grid capacity is there, if they meet federal priorities and are in employment or opportunity zones. So again, I don't know a lot about this, but I'm happy to link you to the people who do. That's it for me. Thank you again for the opportunity to join you today. And I tried to keep this short so we could exchange some ideas and answer questions, but feel free beyond this meeting today to contact me anytime about offshore wind or other programs in the Energy Office, and I can make sure to connect you to the right person if it's not me. Thank you. See if I can stop sharing.
Thank you, Stephanie, and I guess I had some questions, but I also want to go ahead and let people comment or questions around the table here as well. If they have any.
Yeah, I have a question, just a broad question. So what is the connection between, what is it, the Governor's Energy Board or group, I forget what you were called, and the Public Utilities Commission? Do you report to them at all?
Yes, we advise the Public Utilities Commission. They will be the ones that actually issue the request for proposals to provide the offshore wind energy, but we are the ones developing it. We have more of the technical expertise in-house to do that, but we will submit, over, I guess we have about 1.5 years before we submit our draft to them. They will hold lots of stakeholder engagement along with us, but they will be the ones that actually issue the proposal. And then we will help them review it. We have a pretty close relationship with the PUC on lots of topics. We monitor the rate cases on electricity prices, for example. They ask us for subject matter expertise on various energy topics. So we work with them quite often.
Okay, and so last year we passed Bill LD 585, which required certain state agencies to collaborate with Native nations. Do you know if the Public Utilities Commission was one of those agencies?
Good question. I'm not sure if they were. I know we were not. And I guess I'm sort of offering myself as that person for the governor's energy office, because I think it would be helpful for all of us to have clear points of contact. But I can look into if Public Utilities Commission has a named contact in their agency.
I don't remember it being on the list, but I have to look again.
Something more scientific outside of that.
Anyone else?
I don't have a question, but just for additional information on the topic of onshore and offshore wind, as far as the workforce piece, Northern Maine Community College has a established wind technician training program, which they've had for quite a while for onshore, and they've now designed in collaboration with Maine Maritime Academy for the offshore safety wind technician training program, because if you're out there bouncing around and these enormous towers are swaying back and forth, you need a little extra offshore training. So those are a couple of up and running workforce training programs that are tied into this whole initiative.
Is that, so anyone else out there, Darren?
Yeah, so I had a few questions, Stephanie. Thanks for coming here. Can you say a little bit about the design around the offshore wind framework that has already been established? I've read about it some, and I just wanted there's like a zone of like least conflict that's been identified. Is this correct? Am I recalling these reports correctly? And then there's also a place for kind of the research area. And just sort of, if you could say a little bit how that you came up with all that zone of least if you haven't consulted the tribes formally, how did you make sure that we were as tribes not in the zone of least conflict? You see what I'm saying? And then just I guess sort of when you establish this zone, like what kind of cost benefit or what kind of framework you used, and how did it include culture or any of the things that we might be concerned with, ecological sustainability, all that.
Yep. Really important questions, and I appreciate it. We in our state waters, we've actually put a prohibition on offshore wind. So there's no siting of offshore wind power within 3 nautical miles of the coast of Maine. And that includes from the islands as well. So anything beyond that area is the federal government waters. They govern the outer continental shelf, and they're the ones who can lease the sea floor and the outer continental shelf. They're also the ones that have been over the last year and a half going through a process to winnow down, look at the whole Gulf of Maine, take in lots of different information about what people use, what resources are important, sensitive habitats, navigation and safety, all kinds of things. They look at the data from that, and they've been winnowing down to potential lease areas in the Gulf of Maine. So they've been taking into a lot of factors into that consideration. They've been listening to us, the work we did in the Maine Offshore Wind Roadmap with our different working groups. We had one focused on fisheries, one on environment and wildlife, one on renewable energy markets, and then one on supply chain, workforce, and ports. We provided a lot of input to the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management. It's the agency governing those federal offshore areas, to identify the areas we think are most important for everyone who's been part of our discussions. And I know that BOEM's been directly engaging in consultations with the tribes in the Gulf of Maine area. So I think most of the input has been directly to their process. They just made an announcement this morning. I don't know if you saw that, but
no.
okay, I can share the screen if that would be helpful, just showing you the areas they've identified so far.
I think that'd be helpful just so people
Okay.
could see it. The map, as I recall, the map was I mean, just again, like going from consultation to impact to, I think that's what our concerns would be, I think.
Yep. So this is the map that was this is hot off the press on the right-hand side. Excuse me, the green area is the area that the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management is still considering breaking some subset of this, not nearly this whole area, into individual leases.
Yeah.
So you can see that I think the nearest point is 29 miles from shore. That would be off the Cape Cod area.
Yeah.
The furthest point is 92 miles from shore, probably out here. So it's quite
yeah, but the other side of that, of course, is the governor identified Sears Island as the energy reception point. So you guys are all looking at me. You should never have a university professor who does environmental stuff, because this really matters to me. So Sears Island has been identified by the governor, the DOT lands. What kind of process in terms of how that gets built, or how in terms of tribal input or any of that, because that was made without anyone know. I mean, no one I know in the tribes knew that was going to happen, because Sears Island, especially the Penobscot representative, it's a pretty important cultural space for us. It's a lot of it is protected, but I kind of wanted to. How did that get decided, or who was consulted, or whatever?
Yeah, fair question. The Sears Island has been identified as a port site, not an interconnection site for the power, right? So this would be for the port to basically manufacture the offshore wind turbine bases or foundation, and also integrate the top of it, so the tower and the blades and everything all together, and then float that whole package together offshore to one of these sites that will be identified in the future. The Sears Island designation is DOT, Maine DOT's process. They have been looking at that site for quite a long time for different purposes. I mean, it was designated a port site with the agreement that was made a long time ago. They looked at it for like a nuclear power plant before, an LNG facility. All those things didn't seem compatible. But renewable energy was an option, and it's an important one for us to get the economic benefit of offshore wind. For Maine, we really do need to have a port, and also for the ability to even develop these renewable offshore wind sites far offshore. If we don't have a port that can support that, it won't get done. We won't get that 13 gigawatts of clean energy that Maine and Massachusetts have both identified that we need. So there were lots of factors that DOT took into their process, decision-making process. They looked at the environmental pieces, the economic pieces. They had a stakeholder process. I can't speak to their interaction with tribes. I don't know what they did there, but I do know that any subsequent planning and development is going to be through the National Environmental Policy Act process, which involves consultations with tribes. So I'm expecting that they will be working with you all on more of the specifics as this moves potentially forward.
Yeah, I think, that sense of not being included when you designate a site like that, and, it just puts us in a difficult starting point. I guess I'd just say that I don't have I'm not saying I'm representing a tribal position at all. I just think in terms of you're here for consultation, purposes, I just want to tip to that, because there has been some discussion in some of the connections I have within the community, within the environmental kind of world on the tribal side, just want to tag that as a potential issue going forward, the Sears Island piece of that. That's all.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think I'm done grilling her and all that.
Okay.
So hand it over to you, Newell.
Well, Lou and Darren, anyone else on the screen that needs to, raise questions or comments?
Yeah, so I guess this is perhaps more of a comment. So when the chief sat down with the governor a few months ago, I guess now, one of the things that each one of the chiefs stressed in this conversation, we're talking about offshore wind, was that this impacts each one of the nations in the state. And I just wanted to, I guess that's more of a comment, saying that when any kind of consultation policy is implemented, it should include all of us.
Yes. I hear that loud and clear.
Well, it looks like there's a couple of spaces for MITSC representation, Darren. On the advisory board.
You want me to be on more committees, Jill?
Yes,
That's
if
the
you
awesome
could.
thing. I know. Yeah, I was worried about like knowing about anything you volunteer.
Yeah, this is over my head right now, for sure. So there's that piece, and then just kind of general consultation, because we don't have an agreement with the governor's energy office, and that may be something we should look into. Not sure what the Office of Tribal State Relations is going to do if that passes. So they will also be kind of a conduit to the tribes as well. Then in the statute itself, it talks about when there's a competitive solicitation. I just wanted to point out to the commissioners, it's on page 10. At the top, it's a subsection 6. So we'll get copies of the draft solicitation.
Mhm.
Good feedback on that.
Yes.
I did have a couple of questions as well.
Okay.
So Stephanie, so thinking about that board for a second, how is that board gonna be, organized in a way that, we can have meaningful dialogue with the tribes? Do you know that yet, or is that yet to be determined?
You're asking about the advisory board for the
Yes.
research consortium? Yes.
Yeah, so tribal engagement is what was on the screen.
Yes. Right. So if you're interested, if anyone from any of the tribes is interested, there can be as many people as you'd like to participate in those quarterly meetings. And then we have kind of information sharing meetings too, where we might have a specific topic that the group's interested in, and then we hold a 1-hour virtual meeting. Everybody can join that too. We can do that however you like. I mean, we are open to any suggestions for how to make that meaningful for you. We've had a couple of people from the Passamaquoddy Zipayak tribe natural resources team join some of those conversations. They have indicated they're not sure they want to join the advisory board, but they've been attending the meetings. So, that's welcome too. And we consider that equally as important. But it's up to you and how you would like to be engaged with that and what would make it meaningful for you.
Yeah, so I mean, you say tribal engagement on the board, but what could be possible benefits to doing that? Is there some sort of, does this board have any authority or any decision-making processes, or is it just for informational?
It is advisory, but there is funding for research through the advisory board. So the legislature gave us a charge to establish the consortium, but also gave us money So we are in the process of prioritizing what projects we would like to give that money to. And that is one area that would be important for you all to consider influencing. If there are projects that you'd really like to see us fund that would help inform responsible offshore wind, then we would love to hear about those. And then additionally, the advisory board will provide input to this LD 1895 law that's in front of you, particularly on the looking at criteria that we want to see from the plans that have to come in with the bids. So there will be plans like how to protect fisheries, how to protect the environment, how to make sure there are economic and community benefits that come with all of those offshore wind projects. So the advisory board from the consortium will also inform that.
I see. Okay, thank you. So that's goes into my other comments in terms of like the environmental impact to the marine mammals, the fish, and one of my questions would be the transmission line from said generation back to the mainland. How is that going to work?
How will that happen, or how will we
How will it
influence
happen? Yeah.
that? Yeah, so when the developers lease an area offshore, they also have to propose different ideas for where they would like that transmission cable to go and what routes they think it should take. That process also goes through NEPA, the National Environmental Policy Act, and all other pieces like that until it gets to state waters. And then we have our own state regulations around that and stakeholder and consultation processes. So there will be input to all of those through those existing regulations, but there's also this advisory board can help identify specific things they'd like to see the developers do to make sure that they avoid sensitive habitats, for example, that they install things to minimize any impacts to people who are using the area or to the ecosystem there and the habitats. There are a number of ways that that can be influenced, but that there's a federal role, there's a state role, and then there's the input from bodies like the advisory board. And then there's quite a lot about best practices for transmission lines in the Maine offshore wind roadmap. So our working groups had a lot of ideas about that, and we have put those forward to the federal government, and also will be taking that into account in our own state agencies.
Okay, thank you. So, so is there a broad timeline for like actual energy generation, or is that too far out?
It's pretty far out. I mean, we're looking at potential leases this year in the federal waters of the Gulf of Maine, and then it's taken 10 years to develop the projects further south of us, from once they get their leases to they're actually running and producing power. So it's a long timeline.
Any approximation?
I think the earliest ones would probably come online 2030, 2035, something like that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else have comments, questions?
Sorry. I just, I guess another comment. We're talking a lot about consultation, and one of the things that I was taught, is refrain that we need to constantly remind people about that is any kind of meaningful consultation should also come with capacity funding. So every time we reach out to anyone within our natural resources departments, they are already working very hard, and we're adding more work to their plate, should also be paying them as well. So at all stages of this consultation should also come with payment.
Do you have any, I'm happy to talk with you offline about this too, but just trying to think through the best ways to do that. Are you thinking about existing staff or would you hire new people? Are you looking for support for a person that would be kind of like a designated point of contact on renewable energy, or like how can we
I
help with
think
that?
those are some good ideas. Yeah.
Okay,
I'll tell you exactly now, but in creating those ideas, it should also require some collaboration and consultation in order to find out exactly how, you know, our natural resources partner will be able to consult in a meaningful way.
okay, great. Would I be able to reach out to you to talk more about this?
Yeah, of course.
Okay,
Yeah,
You want to?
Sammy's our natural resources guy.
okay, great, thank you. I want to mention to the Research Consortium Advisory Board, we do have funding for people to participate on that. It really just covers, you know, time and travel, but there are resources available for that if anybody wants to join that advisory board, and additional capacity support would help.
Okay, we have a question here as well, Stephanie.
Yeah, you mentioned, you showed a map and it had on it grid capacity, and I didn't see anything where anything down east. It seemed to be mid-coast and down to the southern part of the coast. Why is that?
The map from the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, is that it? Is that what you're thinking of?
Showed it earlier, one of your first maps you showed.
Let me see. Hold on. Sorry, I don't want to take up too much of your time here. Was an earlier one. Well, stop me when I get there. I'm just trying to remember what map I had.
Was it the one with the green block?
One with the announcement, maybe?
Well, she mentioned something about the grid capacity.
Oh, is that, yeah, that's the other program that I am woefully undereducated on. Is it this one?
No, I think you pulled it up separately. Maybe it was with, when we were talking about the announcement.
Oh, the Boehm map. Yeah, let me see. Can I get that? Sorry, let me pull that one back up.
It's not that important, but.
I noticed the same thing.
Okay. Too many windows open. This one?
It was bigger. I think it's that map, but it was bigger somehow.
Oh, okay.
So is the question that the development of this is not up the coastline, it's more like central Maine and south?
Yeah, so the green areas in the middle of the Gulf of Maine, those are the areas that the federal government is still thinking about leasing, you know, some subset of this, not all of this, but some subset of this. And then, you know, once the developers lease, they have to go through a process of, it just gives them the right to develop plans. It doesn't give them the right to build. So they start kind of developing their plans, doing studies, and they'll propose where they want to come ashore with the power. Most of these areas, we think, like pretty candidly, are probably not going to want to come to Maine because it's so far offshore, but we're trying to encourage some of that because we're going to need the clean energy. That's why we're thinking about some of the existing areas where we have the ability to bring power to the grid. So things like Wiscasset at Maine Yankee, for example, or Wyman Station in Yarmouth. There are probably other areas along the coast that it could come ashore, but all of that is yet to be determined. And there's a lot a lot of decisions to happen before that. What are you asking about? I think it's pretty unlikely for power to come ashore down east from these projects, if that's what you're asking.
Is it because of population?
I think it's a little bit of demand, but it's also because the grid there, and that the transmission capacity has some limitations. So it's harder to move the power around. But if there is some existing electrical infrastructure that you'd like to see considered for power to come ashore, that program I was talking to you about, that I know only a little bit about, it's actually a program to help towns and communities think about that if they have some existing power infrastructure they'd like to see built out more for other things, or maybe improve the reliability or something like that. That's a program that you'd be very welcome to apply to. And it's a pretty easy survey to fill out. I think it's supposed to take 10 minutes.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, Stephanie. I'm not sure if anyone else has any last minute questions, comments.
I just have a question about basically how the commission operates. So when you need a commission representative, what's your process been for that?
We appoint Darren.
Okay. Because it seems like that's a really good advisory board to be on, because.
Yeah, no, we should have some contact with the board, yes, and I would just say, and I just jokingly say that, but I think if Sam wanted to be there as too, I know he works in this area.
We might already have one next year then.
Oh, Sherry,
Yeah, but we can make some maps and stuff for. Purposes of
And that's-
sustainability, so I think she might be a contact.
sure, and that doesn't preclude anyone else either from participating.
Well, thank you all again. And I just want to reiterate that I'm available to you in the Governor's Energy Office. If it's about offshore wind, if it's about anything else we do, I'm happy to be a person for you to call, and I'll connect you with the right people if I can't help.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie.
Stephanie,
Thank
can you
you.
share that PowerPoint with me? And then I'll
Sure.
distribute
Yep.
it? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for coming, sort of.
Sandy's asking, can we submit questions for Stephanie to you, Joe?
Yes, and I will forward them to you.
Lewin?
Great. Thank you. Should I drop off? I don't want to be in private business, but okay.
It's public business.
Okay. Okay.
You can stay or leave, whatever you'd like to do.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, so we're all set there, right?
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on to the MITSC financial reports and audit prep.
You know, I actually just wanted to take a step back and talk
Okay.
about the tribal commissioners. And I know I've been pestering you all for letters and copies of resolutions, because that's what the Secretary of State needs. Our listing is really, really out of date. And so I'm trying to keep up on that, and it's great because everybody is good, and Bert just was reappointed, so he's on for another 3 years. So I think maybe Joey, you'd be the next person up for maybe need reappointment, but that might not be till, did you?
Yeah,
I thought we got a
Okay.
letter from.
You probably did, yeah, I just don't have that in front of me, all right, well, maybe you took care of it. That's great.
Did you hear from just that?
Yes, yeah, I did get a letter. And then I guess my only question was Newell. How did you come to be the chair, and was a vote?
Yes,
Okay, So do you happen to know when
I'm
that
here for
was?
another year plus 11 months.
About 2 years ago?
Yes, I think it was January of 22.
Okay,
All right.
sure, I'll just, look at the minutes.
Yeah, I think that was right. And then, I mean, people apply to be the chair, and then the board determines who's going to be the chair.
Okay, so that would probably be in the minutes, I guess.
Yeah.
So, finances are good. I guess I can start off with that. And the audit went really smoothly. We had asked that they really rush us and, you know, see if they could get a report, but they apparently did not. They have quite a few clients. Pat worked really hard with them. I did have some questions that I'm gonna have like a meeting with them when the report comes out. Because it seemed like Pat was having to go online or print out the bank statements and then scan them and send them to the auditors. And I don't know if that's a, you know, requirement of accounting practice, but that seemed like it was an extra step, very time consuming. So I'm gonna look into that. But other than that, they said they didn't see anything. They don't think we're gonna have any kinds of findings. So I think that's good news. And then with regard to tribal contributions, I'm very excited to report that all the tribes have made their contributions. And definitely appreciate your assistance and Joey for making that happen. I did have a question about whether there was ever a definitive vote to increase the amount. I think right now it's $2,500.
Oh, boy. We did talk about that down at our COPSCO meeting back, I think early last year. And we came up, I don't remember the amount that we came up with, but it was an increase that we had talked about. I don't think it's actually been implemented.
The Fulton band's doing really well with sports betting. No, so yeah, I guess at some point, if you wanted to consider that, would be helpful, because what that does is that there are certain things that ordinarily you can't spend, you know, on federal or state funds,
Right.
and that's like food,
Mhm.
those kinds of things. So when your retreat happens, it's nice to have those tribal funds.
Yeah.
So you don't think that was approved?
I don't remember a formal vote on it.
I don't either. My recollection is there was the proportionate increase to the state increase that was included in an invoice if the tribes wanted to pay that extra increase. It was sort of optional. And yeah, I don't recall a vote.
Right. But we could probably find that in the minutes, I would think. That was a meeting that happened at COPSCO Institute,
Yeah, there was actually, it was an interest.
late spring probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
Look for that. I remember reading something about it, but I didn't see a number. And it was interesting at one of the work sessions, I think it was on the bill for the Office of the Tribal State Commission, that someone on the Judiciary Committee said, well, what are the tribes contributing to this? And, you know, I wasn't in a position I could say anything, but I was really questioning. I was like, well, it's sort of your responsibility to, you know, make sure, you know, collaboration is happening. But I also would have said, you know, that the tribes are already contributing to MITSC, so they're already doing their part. So. And then, so just we're on track with no over expenditures. I did have to stop and basically recreate the budget because I really couldn't understand what Paul had in place. And so Pat and I worked on it, and I ended up, it's on page 15, restructuring it in a way that, you know, kind of would match up with what categories you have for grant applications and, you know, collecting it that way. So I know at one point he had said that the payroll taxes were really high, but I kind of undid all that. And it turned out that that was actually the QSERA payments were being wrapped in. It's the same company that handles payroll as well as the QSERA. So I went through and I calculated all of those things. So it'll be easier to track this way and see what is actually going on. And then because I wasn't really sure how much money we had and where it was and if it was committed, I held off on renewing the contracts because Paul had written contracts only through December 31st. And I did sit down with Pat and I renewed her contract. One of the things was her rate was a little high. So I said, well, actually, you're doing more than just our bookkeeping. She really is our office manager. She's the person who's there and getting the mail and assisting with the budget preparation. She's been really wonderful on grant applications because she did that for Cobscope for a number of years. So her title is actually, I think she's actually now like office administrator / bookkeeper. And she was fine with that. I did extend it for 18 months so we could get on a fiscal year because we are not on a calendar year. So it's best if it goes from July to June. So I did that. Let's see. And then Paul, he's on board as a contractor, and a lot of his work is actually helping with the transfer because we didn't have a centralized place where all the documents were being saved. That people had them on their individual laptops. We did set up a Google Drive. And so now we're uploading things to make sure that we have them. We do have like John Diefenbacher, Paul. He downloaded all of his materials onto a little hard drive, I guess, standalone hard drive. So at some point we may upload that. I think it's really important though to have that kind of an archive. I'll talk to our IT guy, Rafi, and I'm meeting with him as well to extend his contract, but to see, is that really the best way to run your network, through Google Drive? So, maybe exploring that, but it's worked for right now. So we'll stick with it. So yeah, in addition to Paul, doing those transfers, he's going to be working on the library, collecting things that are important for MITSC to have in its library that maybe aren't on other places. What's kind of interesting is that the Settlement Act is no longer printed in the federal statutes. So we're one of the few places you can actually find the bill or the act. So doing that, and then those for some of the documents, like there's particular court cases, like I actually came across a court case that MITSC was involved in when the Passamaquoddy tribe applied for some land to be put in trust, and MITSC, was participating in that case. I hadn't seen it before, so that kind of case will be posted up there, and he'll write a summary as to why it's significant. Can you think, Rachel, anything else that he's working on with that?
I don't think I have any.
Okay. So we'll just continue to do that. It's not very much, and it's only going to be, again, only through June 30th. And then Rafi's done an amazing job with the web page. So he does that as well as he provides us technical support. Like this morning, we were trying to figure out how to get this all working, through YouTube and so on. He was on call for us, so we really appreciate it. And then the website is just spectacular. It's really well done. He has also been pretty active with the C-Run. Actually, he's the main videographer for that, for the C-Run videos that are on there. And we'll talk a little bit later about a grant we applied for Sewell, and he'll be involved in that. So I was waiting to see if we got that grant, and then I would do his contract for the two different pieces of project work, as well as just kind of general IT support. So let's see.
Joe,
Yes.
just a comment regarding the permanent storage, the permanent storage of the records. I don't know whether this is something you may want to consider or not, but if it is, you perhaps could reach out to the state archivist. That's under the Secretary of State. The Secretary of State oversees the state library and the state museum, and the state archivist is in that group. And of course, their job is to provide that ongoing permanent storage of records. So if nothing else, they may just have some ideas.
I understand that a lot of our paper files are at the University of Maine, their archives. I I'd really like to take some time and kind of winnow through those. We don't necessarily need to be saving everything. But those things that have that kind of long-standing importance. But that's a great suggestion. I don't think we're paying for it. They're just kind of donating that space to us. And I haven't had a chance to visit it yet, but we did have some boxes at the office, which was helpful because they were the Wabanaki Studies files. And so it was great to be able to access those.
They have a lot of boxes in the special collections at UMaine. It's, I remember when I was an undergrad, I went up and I was asking to see some of that. And they just brought up box after box. I was completely overwhelmed, but
Yeah,
it's there.
right. So I think actually we probably need what's called a document retention policy. And where you decide which documents you want to keep for how many years
And where?
and where, right? And under what level of security
Mhm.
kind of thing. So that's on the to-do list. And then the annual reports were due under the bylaws. They're required. We're actually not required to do an annual report for the state. I did do a little one for them just because I think it's important that you show we exist and what we're doing. So I did file the real brief report that they require. So I worked on the annual report, and it's starting on page 2023. And I was a little concerned because it looked like MITSC was running deficits for a couple of years. And so anyway, in talking to Pat and Paul about that, I guess it was a timing issue that the budgets went through, like you're supposed to start in July 1st. Is your fiscal year start, but the money didn't come through till September or October. So some of the commissioners, you may remember that time frame. So anyway, we're not in a deficit now, but that's why the report shows that. He also helped me with, I went through the minutes and pulled out what work was done. So I hope that if you get a chance to read through it, and then I don't know if you need to do an approval of it. Do you ordinarily approve the annual report?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think we have in the past.
Well, if you-
There's been a long-standing committee members here.
Okay. So if you read through it, if there's anything you need changed or you think should be added, I'd be happy to do that. But I wasn't here, so I was just going from.
So when is the audit gonna be like presented back?
It should be within, like, I would say 2 or 3 weeks.
Okay,
Pretty quick.
so at our next meeting, we can.
Right,
Okay,
yes,
look at
yeah,
that,
but
yeah.
definitely by the next
All right.
meeting. So I did start to work on a 2023 annual report, but it's going to look a little differently unless you have an objection, if you want it to be the boring thing you had before. But, we were thinking that this is almost like not a marketing tool, but it's something that will be great to be able to present when we are talking about what MITSC does and, for the Judiciary Committee, giving them updates and things like that. So unless there's a huge objection, we would like to do something that's a little more engaging, interesting to read. So right now, I don't have pictures of the commissioners. So maybe we'll have to have a photo session at some point, maybe in the next meeting. So right now I just use the tribal symbols for when we list you. This was just a really rough start for it. That will be coming. We are also I'm looking at changing payroll companies. This company Paychecks is a big national firm. And every time you call them, you go to voicemail. And if you email them, they'll send you this, kind of rote response. And they won't answer your question, but they'll say, oh, and we hope you're satisfied with, your service or something like that. I was like, no, you haven't even answered my question. So they've been incredibly difficult to work with. And so Pat did some research and I looked as well. And we looked at local payroll services. So we looked at Machias Savings Bank and Bangor Savings Bank has an arm that does payroll. So I've heard good things about them. And they were actually cost us about $500, maybe $565 less a year to use them. And I could just literally walk in and say, okay, what's going on with this? So I think that will be.
I was gonna say Maine does have many local payroll
Right.
processing.
Yeah, it was very odd too, because, I'm used to doing a lot of things online banking, and I thought, well, why aren't we just going into the portal or whatever and putting our hours in? Instead, you'd have to email a person and tell them what the hours were for the employees. And then, you get something back saying, we processed your payroll. But that person kept changing. I've only been here, like 4 months, and we've already had 3 people. So anyway, I'm not going to justify it anymore, but so we will be.
And we'll save money.
Yes, and we will save money. And we'll be shopping locally.
Mhm.
So one of the things I'm trying to think ahead is the budget planning for fiscal year, I think it's 25-26. The state does a biennial budget, and what will MITSC be doing and what will it need at that point? The legislative session was very I don't know how to explain it. Disappointing, because there were several things that MITSC would have been involved in, like the Wabanaki studies, reestablishment of the commission. We would have been staffing that, and so that would have been a big workload. And then I guess the other thing was that Office of the Tribal State Affairs. People keep asking me, well, what does that do for MITSC, and what's the the interaction there? And I'm not entirely sure. What I've been saying is that I think that the Office of Tribal State Affairs is definitely is from the state, but it's more internal. That person is going to be a conduit and collecting information back and forth, helping. I was thinking tribal folks navigate the state system, whereas MITSC's mission is, different. It's in terms of, working on collaboration and research and reports and things like that. So anyway, just in terms of like budget planning, need to kind of figure out what the scope of the work is going to be. So especially if we take on wind power, that would be another thing to do. So one thing, I was going to wait on this because I still feel like I'm pretty new. But one of the things that became apparent to me in working with like the Permanent Commission on Racial and Tribal and Indigenous People, and then I worked with the Maine Arts Commission. Those are independent commissions. Their employees all get full state benefits. And that's really significant, especially in terms of healthcare, because right now we have really expensive healthcare on the marketplace. I don't know if you've had to shop there. I've always had employer sponsored insurance, so I was just stunned at how expensive it is. So, and then there's a reimbursement that QSERA is limited. Yes, and there's Bert has a question.
Good morning, everyone. Finally, I can show my face. Anyhow, so listen to you, Jill. Have you looked into what it will entail to make to get those changes in place? Like you said, I fully believe that our employees should actually have those benefits as well. So what have you looked into what it would take to get those changes in place?
Well, actually, I'm wondering. Is somebody else saying something? One of the first things that might need to happen, and I'm not sure if this has been an interpretation, is under 30 MRSA 6212 subsection 4, which establishes the commission, says that the commission can employ personnel as it considers necessary and desirable in order to effectively discharge its duties and responsibilities. These employees are not subject to state personnel laws or rules. So when I read that, to me, that sounded disciplinary, like you don't have to go through the whole grievance process or something. But I wonder if that's been interpreted as not saying you're outside the whole system. That's why you don't get these benefits. I don't know where I would get an answer to that. Poke a hornet's nest if I don't have to.
So are you thinking that if they were considered, if you are considered like state employees, would that be different and maybe share in the benefits that are allowed for state employees as well?
Yes,
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, that's what, because now there's like 15 different independent commissions. There's a whole section in the statutes about them. And they are all are treated as state employees.
Mhm.
You know, and there's some other things, I think maybe because MITSC was set up so long ago, 40 years. We could have office space that the state would pay for. They would do our payroll. They would do the auditing. So there's a lot of overhead MITSC's paying for that it might not necessarily. But that might be something for another day. But right now, the most pressing thing is the benefits. So that also works into the budgeting that I would have to.
And is there a similar commission that we could like compare ourselves to in terms of like, maybe even to have a discussion with them in terms of how they operate in
Yeah,
in those arenas?
Yeah, there's many, everything from the Turnpike Authority to
Mhm.
the Maine Arts Commission, the Permanent Commission, but they're pretty new. So yeah, I could give you a list.
This is,
Maybe we should.
I don't know what I'm talking about. So I'll offer a comment. I think all those other commissions that you're talking about are all they're all essentially 100% part of the state government in a way. And the structure of MITSC being a government to government body, I think may be perhaps the reason that the employees are employees of the commission as opposed to an employee of one of the tribal governments or the state government. So that I'm assuming that there must be something in there in terms of the unique nature of, because this is really the only commission that I can think of in the state that is actually government to government. I don't know that there is anything else like that, and that may be an element of what the way it was originally looked at. I don't know.
Yeah, and I don't know that anybody ever looked into this and said, can you sign our employees up for, the dental insurance, that kind of thing.
Right.
So maybe just hasn't been.
But we are operating under statute, main law, right? So it's
Yes.
like,
Mhm.
I mean, that, all that aside, Richard, it's like, we are still part of the state arm, yes. In a way.
97% of our funding is from the state funds.
Right.
So,
No, yeah, understood. But I think the structure, well, you may want to just think about how much under the state that MITSC becomes. That's all.
Good point.
So yeah, I think talking to some of these other commissions, would be helpful, because it says independent. How does that affect their operations?
Mhm.
Do we need a break?
Probably do.
Yeah, if we take a break now, I could start preparing lunch
Yeah.
too.
Great. Ask the chairman.
What?
To have your audio.
There's just sandwich fixings.
From-
I,
There is sandwich fix.
there's good quality sandwich fixings that I went shopping for.
10-minute break.
Yeah, sounds good. 10 minutes?
Yeah.
So.
And just a reminder, the live stream is gonna remain on, so even though we're breaking. Be conscious,
We're still being watched?
we're still being listened to.
Oh, listen.
I'm watching you.
That's some coffee.
There's a kind of like. Yes, it's sure that it's kind of.
Yeah.
Hello, Bob.
Am I on?
Yeah, all I heard was "my on."
Well, I'll try to turn myself off.
Sorry, I was away a bit. What's going on? They're on a break. Did you say something wrong, Bert, and you made everyone leave?
Again, probably.
Again.
Hey, good to see you, cuz.
Yeah. Good to see you too, man. Yeah.
I know. I got to thinking, after I sent a message into, saying that I would be on this meeting, and I was thinking, man, well, we have people that would normally come in on the meeting, but with all the services going on for Auntie Irene and Lorraine and Tracy, we don't have a lot of our people involved right now because we've got services going on. But I know we still need, Auntie Irene would tell me we need to get stuff done.
Yeah.
So, oh, I call her Auntie Irene. Everyone else calls her Ann.
Yeah. And I read.
This is a good time to get yourself situated.
So you probably missed as much as I do, if not, well, I probably missed out a lot. So.
Am I muted?
Not now.
No.
Oh no, I am.
No, you're not. I can hear you now.
Oh well, that problem is I don't know how to mute myself. And you're going to hear my GPS directions. Oh, my wife says she's killed that.
I don't know what it looks like. Do you have an iPhone or a different phone?
Yeah, I've just switched to an iPhone from my laptop as I'm leaving the.
So the Zoom interface, like if you push to the right,
Yeah,
like a couple of times, there's like a button you can press, tap to mute or tap to speak.
yes.
So now you're totally muted and your video is off, Bob.
But now I'm speaking.
Now
right?
you're speaking. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. God, I think I am the oldest member of this commission. I'm struggling.
I mean, it's not that part of the interface for this is not that intuitive, honestly. So
Darren,
don't beat yourself up.
Darren, when I started college, we used to have slide rules.
No, I understand. My college days, we were sort of at the beginning of like everyone having a computer. So
a different generation.
Hey, Bob. Bob, you gotta tell the total truth. It was an abacus.
And my parents lived in Japan for a couple of years. I have an abacus somewhere.
Just so you know, I said that with all the love and respect I have for you.
hear that? You hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can't hear you now, Bob. You're muted, Bob. Yeah, there you go.
Sorry, Professor, I need to visit you for office hours. Yeah, the thing is coming up on the Mars display, so it's multimedia. I hope nobody has to call on me for this. You're all you.
Right.
So anyone that's still there, I kind of missed our first half hour. I had to mute and darken. Maybe you can fill me in on what I missed. Hopefully, if anything of importance.
I had to leave right after the offshore wind. There was a long discussion with the offshore wind person from the state. And just they're looking for input and consultation, but of course, you know, some of the decisions have already been made. I brought up, you know, the Sears Island thing that had kind of been decided by the governor a few weeks ago. I don't recall the nation being, you know, consulted or anyone around that. I mean, that's DOT lands. So yeah, I think there's a really vibrant discussion around that. Probably the biggest thing that's happened, Bert. Just the normal. There's discussions around budget and yeah, different things like that. And then I missed the last since 11. I've really not been that engaged. So you'll have to get some, whatever happened since 11 more people than me.
But it's not something that we have to worry about making a decision on. That I would probably need to be informed. I mean, not this
I
session,
know.
right?
I know.
Okay. So I can get caught up on all the other stuff afterwards then. Pretty much. So Bob, where are you now? You're muted.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
I'm somewhere north. Oh, but I'm making an echo here. Somewhere north. Seven federal state
You're breaking up a lot. So
well, that's only fitting. Let me see what I can do here. Type
well, they said that quite frankly, you know, we're hundreds of thousands of dollars into legal fees at this point, and we, you know, we can't just bump up against Governor Mills's veto again. And we fully accepted that was probably going to happen. So, so yeah, so we kind of shifted after that and said, okay, if we want to get something out of this session and not just die on that, you know, metaphorical hill there, we are gonna sit down and talk to the governor's office, talk to the AG's office, and find that kind of consensus between everything. And we've been doing that the past few weeks. Originally, what we were talking about was three things. The AG's office was willing to consider talking about what eventually became the criminal jurisdiction aspect of the bill that we see now. There was also a land acquisition aspect to change about, you know, the rules around Passamaquoddy and Penobscot needing municipal approval in order to expand new territories. And the third one was federal beneficial laws. And the AG's office kind of floated this idea about this permission. In short, we said we weren't interested in that route with the federal beneficial laws, and we're either interested in the other two. The governor's office said that they weren't interested in talking about land acquisition anymore, so that just left us with the criminal jurisdiction. So that is what we see now, is the bill has been pared down to just to talk about criminal jurisdiction, to expand our ability to try criminal court cases within our own tribal court system. And it's yeah, it passed through work session in the Judiciary Committee with it was mostly split along party lines, you know, Democrats in favor, Republicans against. The main points that the Republicans made was that it was well, the same points that they frequently make is that, you know, they don't have enough time to really understand the consequences of this, which I disagree with. I think they've been dealing with this for a very long time. But they stood by that. And yeah, now next step is to bring to the House and the Senate and go from there.
It was originally LD 2007, and this is on page 42 of your materials. Just kind of an explanation of it was 41 pages. I think, and they were just mad that they read all that, and then in the end, the bill turned out to be, you know, much shorter.
Yeah,
Just to address these.
instead of the 22 recommendations, it's just one of them. It's like three of them, but still, it's
Right, basically the jurisdiction. Right.
criminal
Jurisdictions, that's basically part of the bill. So that 1626, I remember going down like in 2019, 2020. And then it went through, vetoed,
Yeah,
brought back to life. And basically, like you just said, it just kind of got whittled down over the past, what, 2 months,
yeah.
basically?
2 weeks
What we were left with.
over the weekend.
You know, 585.
Mhm.
Yeah, which was just the collaboration policy and the tax law changes, all of which was only just state law. You know, state
So we
statute.
still don't have the equal footing with other federal tribes.
No, there's still a long way to go there. A long way to go. But this is, it's significant still. And that's something that, you know, I think is worth mentioning. It is a change to the implementing act, which is more than what 585 was. 585 was just a statute. That means that if hypothetically a new governor comes in, a new government comes in, they could rewrite all of that. But the change to the implementing act would require consent from both sides. So that we'd be able to hold on to that. So, you know, if we were to get this through, we'd be able to hold on to criminal jurisdiction once, even if we get a LePage again.
When they talk criminal jurisdiction, they're talking about anybody, doesn't matter tribal, non-tribal, or is it, because we already have certain criminal jurisdictions.
I think they added VAWA, so over non-Indian, so you have to be specific. Domestic violence crime.
We already have that. No, Scott, I'm passport, we already do after class.
I think it goes up to C under this.
Oh, does it,
Yeah.
see?
I think so. Up to a year incarceration is maximum. So I just suggest about the federal beneficial acts, because at one point I had asked Alice and Vinnie, because I thought she had said she had presented the governor with a chart. There was 151 bills. And maybe a more targeted approach is to say, here are the federal beneficial laws we're talking about, instead of like a big package deal.
That's been the constant argument. So when we had the bill, it was 2004. That Mills vetoed, last session was, it was. That was her response back to us. It was like, instead of saying, you gain access to all of them, let's give the number that you want, would work individually on each one. And the chief's response was, that just maintains the same status quo, asking permission every time, when what we really want is that's parity with the other fairly recognized nations across this country. And that was the goal, was to bring that kind of fundamental change to the wording of the implementing act, instead of working case by case every time you need to do it, and needing to expend hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees every time you want to make these changes. Which, yeah, and you saw the outcome, Mills still vetoed. Yeah.
And she would, again, I mean, if this had moved through and it's in the state that it was in, and it happened to pass the House and Senate,
Yeah. Yeah.
that would be.
She has never, this same topic came up when we were having, a real roundtable discussion with the chiefs, and she never has changed her stance on that.
Right.
It's just been, this is my stance, we need to do it case by case and law by law, and that's that.
So, baby steps,
Yeah.
sort of.
Well, I mean, I can understand the, wanting a whole, parity of sovereignty with other tribes. I was just thinking, is there something that the Wabanaki tribes are missing out on specifically, like the Stafford Act? So being able to declare emergencies, is there something that, the tribes aren't getting right now that could have been fixed, but I don't know.
When we had the hearing last year, I was there and Jerry spoke specifically, he talked like there's acts that obviously we would have nothing to do with, but that was what he was saying, like all these acts don't affect the tribe. And I understand at the time, they were like, what's the way it is, that's kind of the way I feel. I understand legal fees have been through the roof because of all this stuff, and it's hard to build a swallow. We're not gonna change her mind, I'm sorry, we're part of the process, and that's why she takes this hardcore stance. It's like, it was never meant to be written in stone, and that's the way she looks at it, period.
And I think there's more to the language too, that has to affect or preempt the jurisdiction of the state of Maine. And so I think they keep dropping that piece off, and so applying it more broadly.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Summary.
Could I just a process question? Thank you for that report. Assuming the modified bill that was voted out of committee passes and signed into law, is there a individual tribal ratification piece that has to occur?
Yes, if it's a change to the implementing act, we would need to certify it on our end as well. And there's I forget the actual deadline we have to do it, but it's 90 days, is it?
Yeah, I think,
After the close of legislative
Right.
session.
they did extend that, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the other half of it.
There's another bill too, but
To extend that certification.
it seems like it can change,
Days,
like they can make
right.
it longer, like I think they made it 6 months. Because of Penobscot's process is slower than the other tribes.
So I guess my question is, I mean, I know higher authorities are from the tribes are already on this, but from the MITSC role, is there anything that MITSC should do to make sure that that timeline stays on track, and then that any way that MITSC can assist in being sure that that there isn't a miss of a timeline deadline for the full implementation?
I wasn't on board the last time when the deadline passed. So what I would suggest is I would keep track of it, calendar it, and then I would talk to the representatives from those tribes, and then they can talk to their leadership, I would think might be the way to go.
Okay. Thank you.
And there is this other bill, 1835, and to address this particular issue, it's called an act to require the state to notify tribal governments when new laws are enacted that need to be certified by the tribal government. So the Secretary of State was very supportive, and she said basically that they would be sending notices to the tribe when there is an amendment to the implementing act. So I guess that's a good thing. Yeah, and then a reminder if they don't receive it within a certain time frame. That's the one I feel the best about. I think like that was the one we got, you know, what we wanted out of it. The other one that we spent an awful lot of time on was LD 2001. And originally it started off to be an act to establish the Wabanaki Studies, I guess, Advisory Council. And it was predominantly as a result of the study that MITSC was involved in that showed that from 2001, when the Wabanaki Studies Bill was passed, to 2021, that none of the state school districts had implemented the Wabanaki Studies program. So originally that was the aim of the bill, was to reestablish the council, which did a lot of work, and MITSC was staff to it. They actually came up with draft curriculum and all kinds of resources and things, but after 2 years, the commission, they were done. It was time limited, and so no one followed up with it. So I was really excited to see this. But then what happened was, and that enormous amounts of public support, it was really, really heartening, was that there was an African American Studies bill that was going through as well. And the speaker was very interested in making sure that happened. So at the work session, it was a little surprising. She announced that it was going to be a blended bill. So it's now African American and Wabanaki Studies. So there is an advisory council, but there's no staffing. Originally, MITSC was supposed to provide the staffing for the Wabanaki Studies Council. So we're not involved in that. But she also told us that she wanted to avoid a fiscal note. You know, that was very important. So we worked really, hard with the whole working group, to try to figure out how we're going to do this. But then she actually put in the bill to request $2.5 million for both study areas. So I think it went off to appropriations. I'm not sure how it's faring there. So I don't know. Does anybody else want to talk about that bill? So anyway, I'm not optimistic about its, whether it's going to be successful or not without staff. I think they saw what happened, the past 20 years. There was no one assigned or no group looking after it. Just makes me wonder how it's going to fix the problem. Because when they took out the people who would be working on it directly. So there's that. So we'll see, because it has a big giant fiscal note on it now. Well, there were some gaming bills, but the governor told me right to my face that she was not going to support any more gaming bills. That, she did online sports betting. So she thought the tribes have been treated unfairly when it came to the casinos. But that was it. She doesn't consider gaming as economic development. So I did push back a little bit on that, but, I did get into a huge argument with her over it.
Well, there have been 2 bills that we've been looking at that are looking favorable. They get favorable reports out of the committees that they're in, the BLA. One of them is to, I know I'm not a gaming expert and I've actually never even played any of these games, but one of them is electronic pull tab machines, something called Lucky 7, which would enable us to put these little machines within our tribal lands. And another bill to create bingo machines. We can also put within our tribal lands as well. Both of those left communities with favorable reports along party lines. We'll see where those go. Both of which, at least the electronic pull tab one, would allow more than just us to start doing that. It would also be nonprofits as well, as approved by the Gambling Control Union.
See what happens.
See what happens.
So one thing I was gonna ask about also was the curriculum bills that failed. I don't know if that was 1642 or, I'm not sure of the numbers, but I know they did not allow the social studies and science and history changes to go through for curriculum requirements.
It was the teaching certification that we were looking for.
Yeah.
Requirement that they actually include Wabanaki studies when
Mhm.
teachers had to be certified. And they pushed back on that.
They pushed back.
Yeah, it
on
was the
that.
Department of Education.
Right,
Folks
and that
that-
just happened as well, like within the last couple of weeks.
Oh, did.
Yeah.
I think there was a favorable
Maybe a
vote
month ago. I don't know.
on the teaching of Wabanaki studies in Maine schools. I think it had to do with Callis. That bill passed.
That was for Maine Indianette, I think.
Okay, right.
So did those bills have numbers, Darren, the curriculum for teaching certifications?
I think that was in the original Wabanaki Commission Studies bill. the
Okay,
certification. It was removed.
yeah. the
Pretty
other-
early, as I recall, it was removed pretty early on because of DOE's comment. I think it was removed even before it became a joint bill with African American Studies.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's correct.
Hmm.
I mentioned earlier the act to establish the Office of Tribal State Affairs. So that would create an office within the Secretary of State's department. And the person would be appointed by the secretary in consultation with the chiefs. And there's also going to be established an advisory council that will advise that deputy secretary. And so MITSC would have a seat on that advisory council. And I do think there was funding that they attached some funding to that. And so that intent is that there'll be more collaboration to promote positive governmental relations. But they were really clear that they did not want this to be an advocacy position. That's the governor's office.
Like they have funding through June 30th, 27.
That's right. Yeah,
Sure.
originally the bill was, it was proposed as being almost like a pilot project only
Mhm.
for 2 years. And then, actually, yeah, the chiefs pushed back on that and said, no, we don't want it to be a permanent, position. And so they're like, okay, permanent position, but we're only gonna fund it for 2 years.
Right,
So may end up in the same place.
no, 18 months, right? I think, no, 2.5 years, sorry.
Yeah.
25, 26 and half of 27.
Right. And then the act to provide Indigenous peoples with free access to state parks looks like it went through. Couldn't tell if it went all the way through to, has it been actually passed into a law? So for state-owned parks that we do not have to pay, that Indigenous people would not have to pay the entrance fees.
That supersedes the one time a year where the state allowed
Oh.
Wabanaki's to go in.
Oh, I didn't even know there was
Yeah,
that.
it was like
Okay.
one day. I don't know if they designated the day or not, but
Yeah. It's challenging enough to take advantage of that at Acadia National Park
mhm.
in this process of going and getting through. You're hanging through your car.
Yeah, the one day reminded me of like in Caddyshack, they allowed the caddies to have 15 minutes of pool time,
Exactly.
which went horribly wrong, by the way.
There does seem to be some focus on addressing some of the racist and negative place names in the state. So the permanent commission's working on it, and there was an act 1349 that establishes a commission to reuse state-owned lands and waterways that have sacred, traditional, other significance to Wabanaki tribes. And also to develop a process to return land and waterways to the tribes. So that was a close vote, 7 in favor and 6 ought not to pass. But it only would establish the commission, hasn't really gotten that far. And then the place names issue, was that a bill? Maybe it's just more of a project. 1667. So they did establish something called the State Names Authority. That would be a liaison with the Department of the Interior and the U.S. Geographical Survey, and to make recommendations for renaming main features, and would create a state names advisory board. The Permanent Commission did an evening webinar, and it was really astonishing the number of names that are out there. But they're also focusing on when things are called Indian, like Indian Point Road and things like that. There's worse ones out there, but that's pretty common. So if you want to be on that commission, let them know.
I was 94.
'67 is the place names one. So I guess one of the questions I have is that the chiefs have access to, the governor and the whole process. And we've got the one representative, so he's involved. And it's difficult if I'm not invited, to know what's going on. And sometimes I'll be invited to an early meeting and then nothing after that. So it's been a little frustrating. I don't know if there's a fix for that, or I guess Brian Colleran, he was out of the speaker's office. I think he used to help facilitate that. So maybe I need to find somebody like that.
Or maybe a discussion with him as well.
Well,
Or a
he's on
potential role for the State Tribal Relations Office.
right. But it was fascinating learning experience. So I guess should I keep going?
Yeah.
So that's just that's the first phase of the work plan. I think we're going to talk about the fishing rules as its own separate topic. So we'll return to that. So we didn't have any requests for extended reservations. So we did quite a bunch of work online, as I mentioned, the Wabanaki Studies Bill. And one thing I forgot to mention was I was invited to speak to the senior Acadia College, a very broad topic about the presence of Wabanakis in Maine. And it was interesting. There's about 30 elderly people there, all on Zoom, and just kind of giving them the background and questions. So they were very attentive. Actually didn't have any questions, which was a little troubling, but
Yeah.
so I was like to just stun them into silence. So, yeah, so I guess with the Wabanaki Studies Bill, we still will need a person to serve on the advisory council, the commissioner. And then the ICWA, the Maine Indian Child Welfare Act, and then ICWA. There really wasn't any requests to work on that. It made me wonder kind of who's providing like technical assistance, if there's somebody within the state. I used to get some calls, but I am monitoring a case that's coming out of Minnesota. There's this one attorney that seems to always bring the cases, Mark Fiddler. And so there's a challenge to a case involving Red Lake. They're descendant twins, so I'm not actually sure they're tribal members. So that was a question I had: is this even an ICWA case? But the state judge said he found it was an ICWA case, and then moved the children from the non-Indian foster parents to tribal relatives. One place it says a cousin, another place it says an aunt. So this is going up in front of the I want to say the Colorado, Minnesota, their intermediate appellate court. So far it was been upheld, but one of the arguments that the Supreme Court didn't deal with in the Rackeen versus Holland case was whether ICWA is a race-based statute that discriminates against non-Indians. So they dodged that question. So this one, again, Fiddler is pushing that equal protection challenge. So this could end up at the Supreme Court. Would you like to talk about number 3?
Yeah. It pretty much lays it out in the staff report, but Rafi and I have been continuing to work on releasing tributaries videos, which now also get released as podcast episodes that you can listen to. And we created a new extended introduction to those videos and podcasts to provide more context as people listen in. So you can actually see that new introduction on our website under tributaries on the newest video, which is episode 7, part 2 of an interview with Dwayne Shaw called Hope and Engagement.
Yeah, and you sent that link out, right? You did.
Okay.
Somebody did.
On MailChimp.
Yes, yes, you get the mail.
Yes.
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, so we can, I mean,
Talk about the report.
we're hoping to actually interview Brian, who's
Oh,
here
good.
today, about the Alewife Run, which might as well promote that to anyone listening. Or do you maybe at some point, Brian could share details on that, but put it on your calendars. The Alewife Run from Zibayek to Forest City will be happening May 25th. And yeah, we'll be doing a tributaries video about that.
Hold off and we'll talk about, Sea Run a little bit later.
Sure, whatever you would like.
And then the Holter campsite, right now, there's been a settlement, and so it's just being monitored. So that's not really requiring any active work. But one thing I did do is I did attend the Juniper Ridge public hearing. This is a landfill located, I think it's in Old Town. And, questions about, leaching and whether they're bringing out of state sludge in. I believe the request was to extend their contract and also maybe to expand it to accept more waste. So pretty much everybody who was there was opposed to it. They said, well, they've done a terrible job with it so far. Why would you extend the contract and allow them to expand?
So what was the net outcome, or was there?
It wasn't a vote. It was just listening to the
informational.
comments. Yeah. And it was overwhelmingly negative. I don't think there was a single person who said, oh yeah, let them do that. But yeah, so there's actually quite a few Penobscots there who testified.
Mhm.
And then the impact of PFAS, we did get if you got the contact from someplace called consumernotice.org, who wanted us to link their page to ours because they had a shared interest in PFAS contamination. At first that sounded good. I thought, well, you're concerned about that. Then I did some research, and their mission statement is to raise awareness of PFAS and other environmental hazards. But it was also to provide guidance to people seeking compensation for injuries caused by the actions of others. So, and they had a lot of attorneys on their board. And so I kind of wondered if this was more like trying to find plaintiffs for lawsuits to bring. So that didn't seem like a great idea. So we declined to link to them. And then we're just, whenever there's a public hearing on PFAS or that issue comes up, we try to attend that. And then the Wolf Den project, we're happy to report that their application was denied for rezoning. And so I looked and I didn't see anything where they have said that they're going to appeal. I think they go to the Superior Court and they can file there. So it was 5-2 was the vote. Do you want to talk about remediation?
Yeah, I guess here's where I should have mentioned it, my friend. Just, I continue to participate with the Living Tides group, which I'm in that group with Brian, who's here today. And we recently had a retreat. And Jill attended the retreat, so was able to make connections with some of the members of that group. And within that group, there's a lot of knowledge about fisheries and sustainability and river restoration efforts and fish restoration efforts. So it feels like a beneficial collaboration. And folks have offered their support if we want to take specific actions on sea run recommendations. There's a lot of support within that group towards taking specific actions. And also one of the members who's a fish biologist has offered to help in any way that he could be helpful as we work on updating the fishing rules.
And who's that?
That's Bob Wood. Eddie Bassett was there.
He was a wealth of knowledge.
Such a wealth of knowledge.
Historical perspective.
And has, yeah, I feel like he communicated that anything to do with sustenance issues, he's interested in staying in touch about that. And then, yeah, I'll just mention again that Living Tides is working to help organize the Alewife Run. So, if you want more information about that, feel free to reach out to me or reach out to Brian. Do you want to say anything about Alewife Run?
No, just that, it's nice that the Kennebec River, was all, taken out the Edwards Dam, and they get millions of fish up there. The Penobscots have taken out a couple of dams. And, they're getting millions of fish up there. In 2002, there were only 900 alewives counted in the St. Croix and Split River. And since we opened it up in 2013, and we had over 850,000 fish counted. And last fall, they took the dam out in Milltown. And so, we're doing an alewife run on Milltown pit just to bring attention to the river and stuff. And, we need to clean up our rivers and allow sea run fish access. To go up and spawn in Jersey Sea, and then the albers are just, the American eel are just the opposite. They spawn in freshwater, they live in freshwater, they go and spawn in the saltwater, and then they go back up. And in the St. Croix River, there's only a couple of species of fish that can actually go up the river to spawn because of dams and all other things, pollution. The old log drives and stuff, there's still in one of the river's feet of birch bark, bark, sawdust and stuff like that. And so, so that, like they did in, I think Milford, they got a fish foot there. They're going to be installing a fish foot at the Woodland Mill that can safely accommodate approximately 20 million fish a year. They're saying that the St. Croix River has a carrying capacity more than the Penobscot and the Kennebec put together. At one time, they estimated between 50 and 80 million fish pass through up that river. So anyway, that's on that. And the other part is we'd like to work with MITSC to do different things in regards to the shorelines that are owned by, at least 51% by the tribes, the different lakes and stuff. Penobscots have a lot of area on the east branch of the St. Croix River, and the Passamaquoddies have a lot of land there too. And I think that, at some point, MITSC and the Spirit River Keepers need to sit down and talk about some of these things as to how we can, do different things. They put in laws for the tribe that'll benefit our communities. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I don't think so.
Up to sustaining cultures. And one thing with the work plan is probably will include descriptions of what does that mean when we say sustaining cultures? What's the goal there? But one of them was to expand the role for tribes in the management of Baxter State Park. And there was a bill LD 294 that received a favorable vote to include a tribal member in the Baxter State Park Authority. And then we recently received a giant heavy box of books called Governor Baxter's Magnificent Obsession, Documentary History of Baxter State Park, 1931 to 2006. Interesting choice of timeline. But basically this book is, talking about Baxter's interest in it, and it contains the documents, the deeds of trust to the various pieces of land. It does not mention Wabanaki people. And I mean, he admits that the book does not cover the long, rich history of Wabanaki connections with Katahdin and surrounding lands, and which must play an important role in the current discussions. But it's not mentioned at all. And then also the land claims is not mentioned, which I do believe included the park, if I'm not mistaken. So that seems like a big omission. So anyway, gave you these books, and would like to extend an open offer to MITSC to assist in any of your work related to Katahdin and Baxter State Park. Sure about these individuals and.
So this is interesting. I don't know, Bob Checkaway's probably gonna find this interesting.
Yeah,
There too.
Anyone who would like us to send you a copy.
It goes into the details about his trust. It's
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, because there was some talk about maybe there's not one trust document that says what's going on, because there's always arguments about, Darren maybe knows about this more.
Yeah, it's historical for sure.
Yeah. So we can send you that. We have not received any repatriation requests. I haven't actually heard too much on that. Right, what's that? Oh, sorry, Bert.
Hi, so backtracking just a moment on the Baxter State Park. Now, just a thought, maybe we can have someone come in and maybe like during the retreat or something like that, have someone come in from Baxter State Park. They can bring a crew or whatever, and we can have some discussion over that. It's a suggestion. What do you think?
Yeah, these are this is the Friends of Baxter State Park, so I guess they're independent group. I think they're out of Belfast, maybe. Yeah, they're located in Belfast. Yeah, I guess if they ever plan to do another edition of this, maybe they could talk to the tribes before they issue it again. And then, access to cultural resources. It's actually only been 2 months since our last meeting, so we actually have been very busy, but certain things we haven't spent a terrible amount of time on. So we haven't worked on language preservation, but again, if someone came forward and said, we need your assistance on something, we would certainly respond. We did meet with Leanne Sullivan of the Permanent Commission to talk about that place names project, and then what other things we might collaborate on. It's more of a kind of just get to know you kind of meeting. Then in the area of revenue and economic development, of course, the big news is on this online sports betting, and one tribe has done better than the others. So, but it's yeah. So you can see the income figures on the main gambling control unit webpage, but that won't give you any of the internal documents, like what the agreements are with the different gaming companies, and what the tribes are planning to do with their money, or if they've even gotten any money. They had I think it was $100,000 licensing fee, so that's going to take a little bit to pay off to start with. Then the tribal access to federal block grant funding. I know Bob is still on the line. He had raised this, and I guess I was kind of wondering what specifically, because there are a number of block grant programs. And so I did a little bit of research, and there's at least these 5, there's probably maybe even more. But if we got a request about how you access a specific block grant, most of them do have tribal set-asides within them. So that's good to know. Just if there's a question about how to do that, there is a web page you can look at. And then we did talk about LD 2007 already. I guess that will be one to watch. And I probably should have gotten rid of this number 1, because there there was a bill, I can't remember, I think maybe it's the certification bill that extended the time for the tribes to submit their certification to the amendment of the for the implementing act. But I think because MITSC under the implementing act, the bill that was put through, I think to stagger commissioner terms, that was not effective because it wasn't certified. So the that certification bill should hopefully give a extended window on the tribes that did not certify. And I think Holton, Dan, you did. Yeah, that's your saying. So maybe Council Party did too. So, and then trying to support effective implementation of the tribal state collaboration statute. Did meet with Jerry Reed to find out what had happened. And so far, not a whole heck of a lot. Is when he talked about them having training, it was just that he went over the law and they did a standardized template draft collaboration policy. And then their annual reports were due. Most of the annual reports said, we have not had an opportunity to collaborate yet. So I think we will talk about what that looks like. And I don't know if any of these agencies or departments reached out to the tribes in developing their collaboration agreements. So that's a problem. So he's asked MITSC to help, particularly with the cultural competency piece. So it's something that the state couldn't do. But I also think that they probably need help with figuring out, intergovernmental communication, as well as what does real collaboration look like, right, with the tribes. So there's two other pieces there. But he said, I said, well, do you have any funding for that? And he said, no. And, sort of like, well, how is this supposed to happen? And then I went and I looked on their human resources website for state employees, and they actually don't offer much for training. There's some kind of onboarding, but other than that, there's not a huge amount of employee training available. So it's kind of surprising. But we did have a discussion with Andrea from Broadreach, which had previously funded MITSC to do help create the website and develop the library and with C-Run. And so she said that they did have some interest in receiving a grant application to develop that training. So what I'm thinking is I know we want each of the tribes involved in that development, but I'd like to actually reach out to someone who's done this already. All the federal agencies have had some kind of training for cultural sensitivity around tribal issues. So there's a couple of different trainers who are already, kind of know what topics. And I wrote an outline myself what I think they should cover. But then to make it personalized or specialized for Wabanaki people, taking it that way, I think, rather than trying to reinvent the wheel in terms of what the components should be. So I will be doing I think it's more of a budget because she asked us how much money it would be, and I wasn't sure off the top of my head. Because if you involve tribal people and you ask them to come in and speak and that, you should compensate them. So kind of to figure out who we want to involve, even in the development of it. If we have a meeting, we go to Sabayak and say, could you show up and give us your thoughts on what would you want state employees to know? They should be compensated for that time. And we should be able to feed them.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm working on that. And question 6 that passed. Grants. We haven't done a huge amount around UNDRIP, but we're gonna look for more opportunities to highlight the acceptance of that declaration in our work and try to remind the state of Maine that they did actually agree to it. And that would, I think, maybe dovetail nicely with the sovereignty efforts, because I think there's language in the declaration that talks about that. And then there was a request that I got from, I think it was Pat Wharton, and actually the governor as well, to comply with the criminal history information that's supposed to be exchanged. I guess that was in the discussions about extending VAWA jurisdiction. So it's actually in the law saying that tribal courts and law enforcement have to comply with this. So it was a little uncomfortable to, approach them and say, you need to do X, Y, Z. I'm not really, and I don't have enough history of this whole discussion. So if anybody knows what was supposed to happen.
Well, that information sharing, I don't think that was reciprocal though, right? So, I mean, they're asking us to share information, but then we get blocked on the other end of that.
Heard that.
That's been going on for quite a while, right? Yeah.
They tried to set it up years ago, so we could access, or they could have access to our convictions and stuff in court, and thought that would not be part.
There was the tribal access program that was under, I think, the Department of Justice. And so the tribes would have access to all these different databases. I'm not sure about whether it worked in reverse. But yeah, I can look a little bit more into what the requirements are for this. But I know, like Penobscot, when I was working with the court there, we used to have a newsletter and used to publish, what had happened in the court, like so-and-so dog roaming at large. And after they were like, no, don't put that in there. Why are we airing our dirty laundry?
Yeah.
So I think there's more sensitivity around the sharing of this information, but I think this information has to do with domestic violence and enhancing the crimes and penalties for repeat
They can do
offenders.
that. If the department has a case against a tough member and they want to find out if they have other convictions,
Right.
they do have access to that. They just have to make contact. The reality is, it's been used. People around the reservations know that, so if they deal with somebody that has 2 strikes and it's their 3rd strike, they can use the probable court convictions for towards the 3 strikes.
They have to make a phone call.
They have to make some
specific.
We tried to, years ago, we tried to get it so we were part of that, so if something come up, they could see that in the state.
At some point, would it be good to have like a meeting of tribal law enforcement and the courts maybe to talk about this, what information they're looking for? Needs to be exchanged? Yeah, to start with, to start with.
there first.
Yeah, start with.
Yeah, because they definitely tell you what is out or what doesn't, or, even Bangor probably doesn't even realize they can do that, but definitely not Portland or Lewis or something. They all deal with tribal members. In the end, that'd be a good place to start.
Something to look for. I think Judge Maynard said that they were lacking the technology. What he meant by that.
There is some reading, I'm not sure how old it is, and it's been up. I guess I could ask my wife.
Yeah, I don't think the tribal court systems are tied to anything outside. At one point, they had bought a system that could talk to the district attorney's office back and forth, but it never got connected. Monitoring efforts to return state lands to the tribes. There's a project out there, there's a group that's working on that, so we're open to talking with them if we can be of assistance. And then just talked about working with the permanent commission, and they work generally on issues of structural racism. I'm not sure if they're working on it, but we're going to talk about disproportionate number of Native people who get incarcerated compared to non-Indians in the state of Maine. I think they've ever done a study on that. I think that's so we've been working. I guess that's what that shows. So maybe this is time to switch over to talk about the fishing rules that MITSC has responsibility for. I guess just is Bob there?
Check away.
Yeah, Bob, check away.
Might have checked out.
Yeah.
Hey, Bob.
No, I'm here. I've been here all along. I'm still struggling with the technology, but fortunately, my wife reached into the back of the car and she's got a whole new set of earphones that plug into the iPhone that will keep us from having that echo. So that's great progress. But yes, what if anything can I tell you?
We are looking at for an update on the MITSC Waters Fishing Rules Project.
Well, actually, since I had technical difficulties not being able to link into the last Zoom meeting that Jill and Rachel conducted with Joe Overlock, at inland fisheries, I should probably defer to them. But with the warm up by way of background, I think I've told everybody that MITSC has not updated the so-called boundary waters fishing rules since at least 1998. It's been so long that I think the people in Augusta have completely lost track of us. And the law under the Implementing Act is that MITSC preempts state law rules, but only if MITSC does anything. In other words, unless MITSC does anything, it is state fishing rules that apply. Since we haven't been in touch with IF&W since
Hold
1998.
on, Bob. We need you to speak up a little bit, I think.
Yeah, my
Okay.
volume is all the way up.
Well, can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's a
Yes.
little better.
Okay, I may just hold the phone closer to my face. I did one of these Zoom type meetings when Paul Downing was the chair, and he and I were both in our cars. And I think I wound up showing him my ear every time I tried to hear better. But to cover that ground just a little bit more, MITSC has priority in fishing rules jurisdiction, by which I mean state law applies generally until and unless MITSC acts. MITSC acted to regulate certain boundary waters, which the ponds over 10 acres with more than 50% of the shoreline, outside Indian Territory, and different definitions apply to plots abutting rivers and streams. But in any event, since we haven't been coordinating or collaborating with IF&W, or they with us for the last 20-some years, we've developed inconsistencies where either the state doesn't know that MITSC has acted, or we didn't notify them of our action. So this goes back. Paul Tebow and I met with a couple of people at IF&W, I think last summer. And then they renewed contact and came back to us with the spreadsheet, which is part of your materials for today. Joe Overlock did a great job in going line by line through all the discrepancies. I'm not sure they're entirely accurate. He had some misunderstanding about what were tribal waters, what were state waters, but this is a good example of the kind of thing that we need to go through and get into the weeds, so to speak. Now, in general, I had assumed that what we would do is put tribal resource managers and state resource people like Overlock together and let them work through county by county, rivershed by rivershed, however they want to do it, the updating of the rules. And I had hoped that we would be able to leave all the work to the biologists and that the lawyers and administrators wouldn't have to do anything until the biologists got all done. It may be more complicated than that. Jill has determined that the State Administrative Procedure Act, which applies to new rulemaking by MITSC, as well as regular state agencies, that may not make it as simple as I had hoped to just have state and tribal officials agree and then publish notice. Apparently, MITSC may have to be involved in overseeing this whole collaboration process. Jill, I'm about to wind up and turn it over to you to explain more accurately, but that's about where we are. We have spent a year or so renewing contact with the state IF&W people. They're more than happy to work with the native tribal managers on this because they realize we've got ourselves quite a tie in the knot here. It'll take a while to work it out. This is proceeding against the background, I know, of a separate tribal fisheries summit. I don't know if we need to marry those two projects, but at least we'll want to be aware of one another's projects so that we don't inject any more conflict, but the whole fisheries area should be getting much more active. Sam St. John is fortunately our one commission member who is also on the developing informal working group of Native and state people. I think we've got volunteers, if I can call them that, from all of the tribal communities except Sabayag. We still need a volunteer from that one. Once that is done, please, everybody who's on that, take a look at Overlock's spreadsheet and send me your comments. And we will then get back together with Overlock. It will probably mean Jill, Rachel, and me. With Overlock and whoever else is there. They do have a tribal liaison person there. I think her name is Crystal. I have not met her yet. But in any event, the next thing you should expect to hear from us or me on this is that we will probably set up some kind of Zoom type meeting to introduce state and tribal regulatory officials to begin the process of figuring out how we want to do this. This is all what is now known as co-management or co-stewardship, which is the process by which the federal cabinet offices have now directed their people to deal with natural resources on lands held in trust for Native tribes. And ironically, it's the way MITSC has been doing it for off and on for 40 years, but we just haven't done it in the last 20. With that, Jill, can you take it from there?
Oh, sure. Yeah, we did meet with Joe and he did enormous amount of work to put that chart together. Sorry, I couldn't get it to print correctly. So it's really helpful to see what the differences are. They aren't tremendous, but it's numbers and things like that. One thing he did notice is he pulled up, there's a really cool interactive map on their website. And you can, just go anywhere and just click on it and it will tell you like what the regulation is and so on. Well, he noticed that a lot of the places where it was really MITSC waters, it said tribal. So the first thing he went back and tried to determine, which ones were MITSC waters to update that. They're also in the process of updating their fishing rules and they are going to print, is it July?
He said if we wanted to make changes to the book, they'd need changes from us by September.
So I'm not exactly sure what
2024
changes would be. That's their book, but
I think they reference some of our outdated rules in the book, correct? And so, yeah,
I have to get a book.
but it's, I mean, it seems like it's quite a process, so there's.
Right. So, yeah, they don't want, we'd hate to have them fix some things and only to turn around and there's, gonna be changes. So kind of just, my preference is just to kind of hold off at this point until we can get the working group together to look and determine what the regulations really should be. One question that we needed to do was to determine what Indian territory is. And looking and seeing if we could get some maps that shows that. And then I wondered whether Penobscot Nation versus Fry impacts the waters to be regulated. Because the Penobscot Nation, according to that decision, includes only the islands, upland, not the surrounding waters or submerged lands. But that being said, the nation is entitled to sustenance fish, the entire main stem, free from state regulation. So maybe it has no impact, but I don't know if there's a differentiation between, this is the time you have regular fishing, this is time you have sustenance fishing, or is it sustenance fishing all the time? Like in Alaska, they seem like they have a division of that. So looking at those issues. So I think maybe and Bobby, we already started to create a list of, so yes, and this does have to go through the Administrative Procedures Act. It says it right in the Implementing Act. So that's a fairly lengthy process. And the way the APA is written, it's as if this one agency is all rulemaking authority. And then, so if they're gonna go outside and they wanna collaborate with some representatives from the affected communities, they can call them together as a group and then they notify them of meetings and so on. So, MITSC's in a very different position because you've got 3 different governments, or 4 governments looking at these issues. So I think we're gonna, try to comply with it as much as we can. But it does add an overlay of formality that you might not have expected otherwise. And most of it happens after you develop your rules. And the publication and so on, and public notices. Some of the questions we're gonna have is, should we have public hearings at each reservation, or should we have one in a centralized place?
I was talking about public hearings a little bit. I want to see if Sam had anything.
No, not really. I mean, we're kind of probably at least affected by it, but yeah, kind of our relationship locally is kind of as if you're kind of similar paths with you, so I don't have a whole lot to add.
Okay.
Yeah, so I wrote, I just started to put down some action steps, and those are on page 43. So I'm sure there's going to be more as we go through it.
I don't know if Bob spoke, the contact he spoke with, but a concern I've always had when it comes to travel, the waters, the 10 acres or bigger, there's some that are completely surrounded by tribal land. And we've always asked the question, why are the state so concerned with coming into our land to, when our fish and game officers are trained just as well as theirs and can do the job. And we've had tribal members get summons by state officials that have literally driven 20, 30 miles in tribal land to get this body of water when they have a big enough area to cover in the first place. The state has always interpreted hunting and fishing laws based on the way they look at it, not necessarily based on the way it was written. I know we recently have sent 4 gamblers through their advanced school in the last year and a half. They don't have anybody from any of the tribes speaking about the main Land Claim Settlement Act and how it's enforced. We have a state game warden. Not even somebody that understands law, just could be a sergeant with a warden service who has looked at it and interpreted it his way. We've had people get in disagreements on how they feel they have the right to do some of the things they do. I mean, it can be something as simple as Title 12 or it talks to ATV laws, like they think they can just come into trust lands and see you and stop you and summons you for something when that's not the way it is. So I don't know if that was something Bob discussed when they spoke about that, but there are some big waterways that are affected by that in all our communities, that especially we got some big waterways in the Jackson area. We got some big waterways in the Springfield area that are completely surrounded by
Tribal land. And the body water is probably less than 10 acres, right?
Some are, but there's some that are bigger than 10 acres that they'll drive all the way into tribal land to enforce laws, and we have our own people to do it.
Right.
That's always been a question I've always asked. And they look at the land claims and they interpret it the way they want to. I know guys that have just recently gone through school, scratching their head trying to figure out where they came up with that. They'll bring in their expert, and it's just a game warden from the state warden service. It's not somebody that really understands law. They just look at it the way they want to look at it.
As far as like that goes, right, we really have to take a little closer look on MITSC waters, right, in terms of rulemaking for.
We try to build a relationship, but the relationship to me with the state is always one way. It's the way they want.
Yeah.
It's not.
No matter what.
Yeah. I mean, our wardens locally are working with state wardens collaboratively, but I'm talking about when it comes to understanding the rules and how to enforce them, who should be enforcing them. And I think sometimes they push us aside and determine, this is the way it's going to be. And that's what happens in their school. They'll take a little block talking about the Land Claim Settlement Act, and it's taught by somebody that's a game warden. We're not even talking about somebody that.
Hey, Joey, this is Checkaway. I'm glad you mentioned that. We're dealing, just opening our discussions with the regulators, not the enforcement side, but obviously this is something that we've got to get everybody on the same page on. And I will be back in touch with you to ask for more details on that. I'd be asking you to join the working group, but I think we've also already got Mr. Sewell from Township. We just need somebody from Sabayak, and let's clean this up.
Yeah. Yeah, sounds like a educational opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh, this is education. This is collaboration.
Mhm.
This is fishing regulation. This is the way to do it.
Yeah.
Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much.
We'll just keep plugging away, and I think that, Bob talked about what's going to be the next step. Bob? Oh,
Jill, was that your question to me? What's the next step? I
well,
think you,
Bert has a question.
oh, go ahead.
Well, just real quick, a thought that's been going through my mind is this whole thing with MITSC waters. Okay. And thinking about that judgment that was made against the Penobscot Nation as far as our rights on that river surrounding our home. If I remember right, I don't have the information right in front of me, but MITSC has control of water, that basically borders tribal, right? So my question would be, my thought is, hold on a second, I got. Sorry about that. Had a Harley going by making all kinds of noise. That's a beautiful sound, but not right now. Anyway, so I'm thinking, in my mind, and I, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm thinking that MITSC would have, under that current ruling, that MITSC would actually have jurisdiction over those waters surrounding Indian Island, the reservation islands, on the Penobscot River. Like I said, I'm just thinking off my brain, which so and listening to what was said about the jurisdiction, would you say, Bob, something about the enforcement, as far as or enforcement or whatever. Anyway, I would think that MITSC would still, I think we can impose our existing laws or rules that we had in place in the first place. I know that there's got to be some changes, and we have to work on getting those changes in collaboratively. But I think for the meantime, because from what I understand, unless we take action, unless we do anything, then the state's going to have control over that stuff. They're going to impose their own control. But in the meantime, to minimize that impact, I think if we impose our restrictions or guidelines on those waters, I don't know. I'm kind of just talking off the top of my head, off my thoughts, without any real education over it, but I'm just trying to put it out there. Maybe someone can fill me in on that. I'm sorry for getting all mixed up here. I might have messed people's brains up.
No, Bert, you're doing fine. And you ought to suggest you and Daryl talk to who is it? We've got whoever it is we've got from the Penobscots on that working group, because it's sort of a new world here. We get to write on a new slate.
But I think you made a good point, Bert, that the 1998 rules are still the rules. It's still in the statute books or in the regulations. So that actually is the governing provisions. No.
I got a comment.
Thank you, Bert. Robert, did you have more to add?
No, I think I've done enough damage.
No, I was asking Jill. You have more to add.
No, I just wanted Bob to say what the next steps were.
Oh. We have a comment from,
I mentioned the next step will be another Zoom meeting, and this time we'll try to get the resource people involved.
thank you.
That was the next step of the.
You said with the natural resources people, is that tribal?
But I mean, everybody, we've got to get all the tribal people, and I don't know if Joe Overlock will handle things for IFMW on his own, or whether he will break it up into their regional biologists too. I think we're sort of feeling our way here.
Okay. Thanks, Robert.
We
Ryan?
just said, you said that, ponds that are more than 10 acres, waterways. Okay, we have, on Township 19, we have a place called Grassy Pond. And back quite a few years ago, I sit on the Blueberry Board, past quite a while, Blueberry Board. I've been sitting on that for a number of years. Anyway, they were looking, they were starting irrigation. So they were taking the water out of Libby Brook and different places, and they wanted to pump some water out of Grassy Pond. And it's 9 acres. And the state said, no, it's classified as 10. And so if the if the Blueberry Company was gonna pump water out there, it'd be in violation, they'd have to pay a bunch of fines and stuff like that, so they just went ahead and started doing some drilling and with underground water and stuff to start irrigation of the fields and stuff. And so it just seems funny that the state's got the best of both worlds. We had a grassy pond, it's about 10 acres, but they classified it as 10 acres. So we couldn't pump out of that. And these are the inconsistencies that I've experienced through the years in regards to the state of it. I just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, thanks. I feel like I've, the situations where you pull on a thread and the whole garment starts to unravel. But this is good. This is the kind of thing we need to get collaborating on and get reconciled. Grassy Pond, that goes on the work plan. Thank you.
It's listed as one of the waterways.
So it's what it is.
That's what I mean. I'm with you. I think that's something we need to address, but
Yeah.
they have it listed as one of the waterways that are.
And if we're gonna keep it as 10, that's fine, but
If it is,
during the time we had. It was no place for irrigation and stuff. And then, because of the sand and everything, they didn't want you pumping water out of the rivers.
If it isn't 10 acres, then it shouldn't be under, the state shouldn't be telling us to do.
Well, and then the other thing is if it's all on tribal land, how does that come into play as well?
Yeah.
If it's 100% bordered by tribal land.
Which it is.
Right.
Trust land.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know from talking to John Banks when they updated regulations years ago that at one point they had to call in the Sewell Company to do a survey of Grand Lake Matagamon because it was not settled whether they met the 50% shoreline requirement on that one. And I'd like to think that now with the advent of digital mapping and GPS and Google Earth and so on, that we should be able to figure out some of these borderline questions without having to hire a survey. But this is good. Let's get it on the list.
Right. Thanks, Bob. Joe, Brian. That was item 10. Sorry, 9.
Yep.
And
We touched on number 10 already, a little bit.
touched
but
on
I don't know if
10
Rachel
a bit.
wanted to say more about.
Okay,
Oh, yeah, when I started working with MITSC, I was like, okay, this is a wonderful book, the C run, and what's next? And it turns out there's a series of recommendations in the back of the book. So
and then the Sewell grant is then companion with that?
it's
terms of
to,
like
it's how
grant
do we,
implementation?
do you want to talk about it?
Oh, no, I was just looking for what we had put under, I was looking for C run in the staff report. Oh, there it is. Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, we did finally get to pass out copies of C run or distribute copies of C run to IF&W Marine Resources and Environment and Natural Resources Committees at the State House. And then as far as the Sewell Foundation grant application, we included money to record, we requested money to record C run as an audiobook, working with like a professional company that can even work with Wabanaki narrators. So that will be really exciting if we could get funding for that.
Then I'd even be able to read it.
Yes, you can listen while you drive.
Exactly.
From meeting to meeting.
Interesting. And then,
There's
yeah,
a lot of stuff. Lots of-
But I feel like from the commission, it would be good to know what are the next steps regarding the recommendations at the back of C run? Are there actions that the commission wants to take? Especially knowing that there are other groups in the community that want to back those actions in any way.
Is that something we can highlight as an agenda item for next time?
I think so,
Right.
because, yeah, and this is a good place because some of it has to do with how the state views sustenance. You know, how it's, for them, it's one person gets to take for themselves as opposed to, a family to support,
Mm,
that kind of thing. So that's one recommendation that strikes me. Also Judd Nelson, is that his name?
Judd SD Kendall.
Oh, SEK. He's available to, help MITSC. So one of the things might be to research, are there statutory changes that might be made or policy changes, and he could research that.
Yeah.
we had a Passamaquoddy member also done that.
Yeah. Tony,
Yeah, Tony Sutton.
27.
Yeah. Mhm.
I guess it's to get back with them, actually, see what their vision was for that.
Yep.
Yeah, well,
Invite them.
so maybe an agenda could be that we'll look at those recommendations and have Tony and or Joe
Mhm.
to highlight them.
Excuse me, Jill and Rachel, have you already circulated the C-Run report to the people on the mailing list from the Tribal Fisheries Summit?
No, I have a spreadsheet of who has received C run, and so some of the people in that group probably have, and some of them probably haven't, so I think that's a great idea to go through the list of people, and we could mail a copy or bring a copy for meeting in person to anyone in that group that doesn't have it.
Yeah, he was referencing, there's a 2-day tribal fisheries summit on Indian Island on May 1st and 2nd.
Oh, he was talking about that. I thought he was talking about our fishing rules group.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, so
but yeah,
them too.
okay.
We do have money to print more copies, so to be able to cover that. One of the things was that, so unfortunately, I had already scheduled a trip to visit my daughter out in Colorado during that time. And so I said, well, Bob and Rachel will be attending. And Dan responded that, he sent the invitation to MITSC in hopes of having someone from that team who is a tribal representative or a tribal advocate join us. So, I was a little taken aback by that, because I'm thinking MITSC is a combined group. But so anyway, I wanted to ask you about that. Should, we just send. I think he wanted a tribal. Okay.
Go there as the other nature resources member.
Okay,
Enrolled in it too. Prepare that problem.
yeah, that's great. Great, yeah. Yeah, so if you need,
Rotation.
and if you need any, help with the presentation or materials.
Sorry, I think we'll also have our, my boss, she's, Warrior College going as well too, so.
So did you take that as non-tribals, not welcome to attend?
Not to present on MITSC
Oh,
behalf.
to present on next.
Yeah.
I see.
I didn't feel that was up to me to say. So, but you're going, so it's great, worked out.
Okay.
But yeah, are you gonna be you're on the fishing rules committee too?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, you know what's going on. I'd already talked about, so the Sewell grant application is actually in your materials.
Yes.
And chatted about that. Already talked about cultural competency training. I'm gonna do a request for proposals to the folks that have already done this kind of training and see, how would they develop ways to collaborate with Wabanaki communities, to help them use it with that. And then I'll do a grant application for that. Broad Reach is just one place we can go, but there's some other places. So I guess, I'm glad we have some time, is to talk about the retreat.
Wait, number 12?
Yeah, up to
Yeah.
12. I haven't been to the retreats and I don't know what they're like, but we did get some feedback on when I asked for dates. And I think you were the only person who,
Didn't reply?
no, you replied, but I think there was one day you said you couldn't do, maybe you want to do Thursday, Friday, and it was really in the Friday, Saturday.
Oh, yeah, Thursday, Friday.
Yeah.
Are generally done.
I think the majority of people preferred Friday, half day, Saturday.
I'm not opposed to it.
Okay.
I'm just saying,
So I guess the question was, what do you do with your retreat? And the topics do you want to discuss? Do you want team building exercises or no? We'll do that trust thing where somebody stands on each other's shoulders and fall.
Talent show.
from the tree, right? I mean, that's something we definitely should take a look at, right? Come up with ideas and have each commissioner bring forward something that is like at the top of their priority.
Because yeah, while you're all together, was there anything that was particularly beneficial to you in previous retreats?
You mean in terms of process?
Yeah, like did you learn something? Did you bring in somebody who educated you about something, or did you have massages, do yoga?
We've had people come in and do presentations. Not, I don't think every time, but we definitely have people come in.
Did you have Living Tides come last time?
Last time we facilitated a larger fish talk, we called it, and it was groups from, I mean, there were people from Down East Salmon Federation, Living Tides.
We were gonna bring in
There
the
was
chiefs as well.
Yeah, there were other tribal citizens that are involved in fisheries. Someone from Sabayak Environmental Department came. So that was a larger group. And there was interest in continuing that, but with everything else that's been going on, we haven't actually held another one.
And Bert's got.
Oh, Bert?
Oh, no, me again.
Rob Hurt.
Anyhow, one of the suggestions, it's been in my mind for a little bit, with the new commissioners coming on, there's something that we need to probably keep in mind, is that would be a perfect time to kind of get them caught up with a lot of the things that this commission is working on. I know, the very first meeting that I ever attended as a commissioner happened to be right there at Holton Band in their nice camp area that they have. That was where I was exposed to pretty much all of the things that are going on at that time. and kind of getting used to it, you know, all the education that I need as a commissioner, as far as you know, doing what we do. I think that's something we need to keep in mind as well, you know, because I think we're gonna have some new commissioners by then, and you know, so add that in there, and then as far as anything else, I'm not so sure. I'm
Great
open.
idea, Bert, onboarding, I like that. Get people acclimated to, you know, rather than like.
I thought he said water.
That's it, feels like it's sometimes.
Thank you, guys.
Oh,
Yes.
thank you. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
I'm interested in hearing what the language efforts are. Like, who's doing that?
Yeah, so I will focus a little bit on that also, like, and I wanted to just be able to talk to some of the, like. There's a big network out there, right, but we're kind of like scattered, so we're trying to bring them, we're trying to get them to like rein in and come together in like a. Coordinated effort to bring the language. And I think maybe MITSC can help, I don't know.
There's anything, yeah.
Yeah.
Just in that. And then there used to be something called the Brown Ash Task Force. We talked about, they were looking at the emerald ash borer. And so I think Darren was involved in it. Just in terms of, you know, preserving.
Yeah.
Important wood.
I mean, that work is ongoing. You know, I think John Daigle is actually leading the group. I used to lead it, but he was leading climate change work, and then and now I'm leading climate change work. I was leading anyway. Yeah, I'm sure they could present on the findings, the ongoing findings and work related to. Yeah, hold on, I got to go, but that's John Daigle.
Okay, thank you.
So in terms of the retreat dates, I think you mentioned the second weekend, is that right?
Yeah, I think the meeting was the
The second
6th.
Saturday?
I can bring that in just a second.
What month?
Yeah, so
September.
we're looking at September, oh, sorry, it was the 13th. Yeah, so we were looking at September 13th and 14th.
Right. so
And in the
just-
past, like, people have arrived even Thursday night,
Mhm.
if they're traveling a distance, and could spend the night if we're doing it at Cobscook again, which we have reserved Cobscook. And so then we could go all day Friday, envelop the public meeting in the middle of that, and then go into the Saturday.
No, I was just thinking about like even Malseet's recognition day used to be close to those
It's like
days.
the first week of September. Let's see, like, usually always in September, I just don't know which weekend.
Time for anything fun. Group paddle, do they have canoes or?
They do
kayaks?
have a bunch of canoes at Cobscook. We could totally go. I canoe around that bay all the time, so. That'd be fun. As long as we get the tide right.
Oh, that's true. I forgot where we
Walking
were.
through.
So used to,
Any tide down there.
yeah, no, I'm so used to just jumping in my backyard, it's right on the river, I know.
It's a little bit.
Yeah, you're right, sorry.
It's really a great,
Sailboat, okay.
it's a great little bay to paddle around in though, if it's like close to high tide, it'd be perfect.
Maybe another idea.
Yeah, so I'm just thinking, if you even moved it back 5, 6, 7 September.
Well, I guess we should figure out when the,
Right. Recognition day is.
yeah,
You can wait to hear back.
And I just mentioned it because I knew that was around the same time.
Yeah.
Well, right now.
Probably only have a day.
And township sometime is in September now.
God almighty knows when they change
But-
around so much, there's no.
But last year it went from September to October, November, December canceled.
There was so many deaths.
There was- We did between Zebaiak and Pleasant Point, Mandaco, we had.
Pleasant Point's always the first.
Right, no, I mean, but we, during that time period, we had what, like 9 deaths
Yeah, it was bad. They ended up just canceling altogether.
from October through December.
They did 7th to the 8th, 2 days.
Pardon?
September 7th to 8th.
Oh, good.
7th and
Okay.
8th.
So we're not in conflict.
Yeah, it is, bro.
You asked the boss?
That's my mom, I don't
Oh.
know.
Yeah, she's the boss.
Definitely the boss. She's there. Maybe one of the boss.
Definitely the boss.
She's on council, so she
Are your community days like open to the public?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, because ours, I guess are, but that's like, I don't know what there is to see much. Suppose that
Well, it's like,
people sell
it's
their.
like a powwow, really.
Yeah,
Yeah.
people come and want to sell their stuff, and
Yeah.
the more people come, the more they sell.
I think ours was done last minute last year, so. It's
Yeah.
really just organized.
That was like the first weekend in August, so.
Like it used to be,
Usually.
yeah.
Yeah, for the Penobscots, it's only one day that it's actually open to the public. The rest of the time, it's tribal citizens that are involved in the various activities going on. But as far as what some people like to call a powwow, that usually is open to the public. And
That's usually
it.
Saturday.
I'm thinking it was on a Sunday. Because usually Friday and Saturday were all the different events and stuff like that. That tribal citizens would take part in, the runs and canoe races and all that kind of stuff. And then what used to be called the pageant, that part is usually on the last day.
This would have to ask. I don't know who's organizing it.
You don't know the date of that one.
No. I hope that you can come up with a fun activity to do as a group or during a retreat.
Yeah, so we do something.
Yeah.
I don't know if we ever done activities before.
I think it's a great idea though, like just some fun bonding thing, especially if there's new people, like to not just talk all the time and do something.
Make a basket. We
Mm-hmm.
make talking sticks sometimes.
They have cornhole things there now.
Ah, some healthy
It's a
competition.
little tournament.
Cornhole tournament? Bring it on, man.
Go, brass talking will start, it wouldn't be fun.
Better start practicing.
I'm so
I
good. I'll
was
be the
gonna say
instructor.
that.
Yeah, oh my God. Go. I'll bring you a ring, don't worry.
Bookmarks?
All right.
We do that in half hour.
Any new business? Are we done with retreats? Sorry. I think we got the date.
Yeah.
Yes.
How did you do the food?
I worked, well, we've done it two ways. Kovskuk has
Angie?
someone that they hire, and then I've also hired a different local person who's a really good cook and baker and kind of
Oh, who was that one?
Lauda. Yeah, she's.
yeah.
her food was really good.
So the commissioners don't have to bring anything.
Nope, no, the food's all provided.
We don't have to kill a moose or anything.
And that, unless that's our activity.
If you do it, I can get a permit, I'm looking.
Gonna go fishing.
That'd be awesome.
You don't want to kill it with a bow though.
Mhm.
It'll be a tough task, but tough task.
So I guess for those who are on the Zoom, if you do have any ideas or topics that you'd like to have discussed at the retreat, you'll just shoot me an email.
I would encourage everyone to like submit one thing that's like at the top of your priority list,
Good idea.
right? And then we'll maybe do them all.
I just submitted mine, right?
You did. Are we having a regular commission meeting at that time too? That's.
We do.
The only suggestion I might add is back to the fishing regulation work. If there is something that's ripe by the retreat, that you may want to actually have not an information session, but an actual work session, and get the state players and schedule some time, if the timing is right, to, you know, do some of the work or propose some of the joint regulations, or, you know, an action oriented component rather than all just information sharing.
That is something that that we have done in the past, you know, where, you know, just what you said, Bob, and I'm glad you brought it up because I agree with you.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. I think that's a good idea because we've done work sessions as well as have the public meeting. We've also had work sessions, or not, I don't know if we called them work sessions, but we had discussions around various topics. So let's look at, like I said, you know, if everyone can submit something, and I think Richard and Robert also just submitted theirs. We could have some a lot of nice things to do at the retreat as well. And I don't know, are we okay with retreat now? I want to move on to next meeting, but I got a comment to make as well.
I think so.
Anyone else? No? Going 3 times? Gone. Okay. So Richard, are you joining us again? Richard Roden,
At the retreat,
at the retreat, next meeting?
I don't believe so. I think I will have passed my expiration date. And you, you'll have new fresh membership.
So are you already past your stay, or what does that status look like?
Well, I mean, I'm 2 years, I'm 2 years past my expiration. So, I've, like Bob, I continued to make sure that, you know, there was participation and that we would have a quorum. But now that, the new commissioners are teed up and will be in their formal, terms, then that will wrap it up for me.
And if they're not at the next meeting, you'll join us and fill in?
When is the next meeting? I would anticipate by the next meeting that they would be in place.
One would think so, yes, but
May 10th is the next meeting.
May 10.
Oh, yeah, I would think by May they will have been, confirmed and sworn in. Yep.
Hey, Richard.
Yo.
So I hope that even if that's the case, I would hope, and maybe our fellow commissioners might agree, that maybe during our retreat you can also come in, because you have a vast knowledge and experience, and you know, I really appreciate that. And maybe you can come in and kind of help guide things along for the new commissioners that may be coming on.
Well, that's very, very kind. I'm certainly happy to help out. I think, it sounds like they've got a pretty capable group teed up.
So May 10?
Yep.
Sorry.
Wabanaki Cultural Center in Calais,
Yep,
July 12th. At the University of Maine at Presque Isle. Retreat is on September 13th and 14th at the Cobscook Institute.
what's the date for Prescott?
It's July 12th.
July 12th is a pretty rough date. I think I'm checking. That's the Wabanaki Festival and all that stuff in Bar Harbor. The stuff is the 12th, 13th, 14th.
Okay.
Maybe a different day.
Sorry, just alerting you. That
No,
might be
it's
tough, but-
good. I haven't seen anything on it.
It's not on the right list, Jill. Gotta get on the right list.
Maybe, well, we still have a little time to make adjustments for that one, right?
Wednesdays are the best days for me.
Would people be able to do a Wednesday, the 10th? July 10th?
Wait, so when is our webinar days? When the days are then?
Well, for me, for the most part, I'm pretty flexible. Maybe painful, but still flexible.
Renewal July 10th.
So I can, yeah. I can.
Would the 11th be just as good? I'm only asking because I actually have to be in a Roostick, like I made plans to be in a Roostick on the 13th. So if the 11th was just as good for people, then I could maybe stay and work Friday and then still be up here. But if not, it's totally fine.
So what works for you, the 11th?
I was just wondering if Thursday could work just as well as Wednesday.
Teaching day.
Oh, okay. All right.
You could zoom in.
Mhm.
So we're saying July 10th in Prescott?
Yes.
Yep,
UMPI, no?
right. But to make sure they're available.
Yeah, I'll reach out to them. Maybe I'll just work from Prescott for 2 days.
There you go. See, that's gonna say, just extend your stay.
And there was one happening in Calais, when is that?
May 10th.
May 10.
And then there's the retreats. In September, and then the next one is November 8th. And that's scheduled at the Mitchell Center.
When was that one?
October?
November 8th.
November.
Send out a memo, so you guys.
So I have a 4 o'clock meeting as well.
Today?
Yeah.
Oh.
Where do you have to be?
Me and no.
Yeah.
Sam and Lord.
What?
Before I put more time in this, are you okay with this format for the annual report?
Yeah, I like that format. Yeah,
Right.
definitely. Hurry it up.
Yep.
That's what I said. So I'm glad you can join us.
Yeah, maybe so.
Regular attendance.
Oh, shoot, to adjourn.
I've been watching the live stream
I'll
the
make
past few times, but it's really
I'll
nice.
second.
Yes.
You can always hear who's talking.
Take it over.
Live picture, it's to
Be here.
actually sit there and.
It's hard to hear
All those in
people
favor?
on the.
Aye.
That's that.
Who seconded?
See,
We're out of here. Okay. You're done.
right.
Hey, listen, I can tone a lot of people. I rep high school
Thanks
basketball.
Thanks for
Thank you.
connecting.
They don't ever call you names.
You guys.
Probably a lot
Have a
of-
good weekend.
Take care, everyone.
Up to Scanomio.
Probably not much better in Suffolk County where I rep. It's pretty crazy.